concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It is coming up to 3 minutes past 6. It's Thursday, and we are here. It's the 10th of April, and yet again, we have got a day ahead of us which none of us could have predicted. Well, when I say none of us, I mean obviously everybody else apart from me, because I could have predicted it, because I've been predicting it for quite some time. According to the Times front page this morning, Trump puts the brakes on tariffs for 90 days. Front page of the Mail, Trump blinks but doubles down on China. And on the Daily Telegraph front page, Trump blinks first in trade war, 90-day suspension of tariffs for all but China as he bows to criticism from key backers. He basically done what any sensible person would do, is that when the game changes slightly, you change the game slightly as well. So a lot of stocks made a bit of a rally yesterday. So for those people who were saying that we're all going to hell in a handcart, perhaps you could just put some new tyres on it now and stop panicking. Put the brakes on! No, whatever you do. A couple of massive stories today to report to you, though, apart from the Trump business. Ray Parliamentary is here to help us with some of the big stories in the papers this morning. Police are blocking hiring of white people. This is a story in the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Kevin O'Sullivan broke it last night, actually, on this very station, on Talk with Isabel Oakeshott. Her name's on the story. One of the biggest police forces in the UK has temporarily blocked applications from white British candidates in an attempt to do what? Sorry? To do what? Boost diversity, you say? OK, very good. That's West Yorkshire Police is preventing white British candidates from applying for jobs as new recruits. If you think that story's mad, wait till you hear the next one. Hamas are wanting to use the European Convention on Human Rights to fight their status as a terrorist organisation. They've actually got a law firm based in South London, which calls itself a human rights law firm. They are apparently representing Hamas, and they are presenting a petition to the Home Office in which they say that the prescribing of Hamas as a terrorist organisation is entirely against their human rights. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this one, but we'll get to that. Also, despite the thousands and thousands of people who have been coming to this country on the small boats over the course of just the first 4 months of the year, guess how many people have been convicted of piloting those boats? Could it be, you know, I don't know, 100, a couple of hundred, maybe 50? No, it's five, actually. No, I'm not going to do the count. It's just five 4, 3, no, 5, I said. It's 5. Can you believe that? Also, the BBC have put a statue of a sex abuser back. It was attacked by somebody with a hammer. Eric Gill is the guy's name. He was a sculptor, world-renowned, apparently a very, very talented man. Unfortunately, he had a bit of an issue with his sexuality because he molested his own children, he molested his own sister, and he had sexual relations with his dog. But the BBC say, look, that's not a problem because he was a very good sculptor and we'd like to have his sculpture outside of the BBC. You might agree with it. I don't know. Plus, we're going to be talking about Birmingham again because the rats are getting bigger, the bins are getting more overflowing and everything is going horribly wrong. But don't worry, Liam Byrne is one of the MPs for Birmingham. He's decided to go to Japan. To go and check out what's going on over there. Anyway, so much more going on. Hospitals cutting 300,000 people off their waiting list at a stroke. That's what we said they'd be doing. Brits are being hammered by the passport tax, which has gone up today as well. That's a Talk exclusive. I don't know, so much news today. I think we're going to need about a 10-hour show. This is Morning Glory. Shall we get it on? Indeed we shall. Rafe Harleman-Koo, very good morning to you. I guess we better kick off with the Trump situation, hadn't we, and the latest on the tariff wars. I didn't check what the London stock markets closed at, but I presume they were still down, but the American ones seem to have rallied quite a bit.
Yes, if you were lucky yesterday and bought Apple or Tesla shares, you'll be having a champagne with your cornflakes this morning, I think, because they're up by 15 and 23%.
Right.
Just in the space of a few hours.
Call me old-fashioned. This is what stock markets do, isn't it?
Well, you buy when everyone is selling. This is the basic rule. This was Ted Hughes. Howard Hughes. What is it, Ted Hughes?
Ted Hughes wrote some good poems, though, I must admit.
Howard Hughes, great success. The US stock market up by 7% in total, but it's still not enough to actually correct.
No.
But for one day, it's not bad.
It will take a while to get back to where it was.
But more curious is why President Trump did this, and it seems as if it was the bond markets that actually finally spooked him into action here. It was the markets, remember, that caused Liz Truss to think twice, and here too. And it may be, of course, in the bond markets, for our viewers, that's where, when the stock market is collapsing, investors traditionally go into the bond markets as a safe haven.
And that's where the debt is,
and that's where the debt is held. Now, coincidentally, who are the biggest holders of debt? One is Japan with $1 trillion, and then it's China, and then there's the UK. And there's a lot of talk as to maybe Japan and China were actually dumping these bonds, which caused that. One of the issues you must take into account if you're going to have a trade war with China is the second biggest holder of your debt. Plus, of course, a lot of businesses were applying pressure on President Trump recently. Also, the Republican Party, midterm elections coming up in 2026. If they were going in in a recession,
what he wouldn't have wanted is for prices to go up in the shops, because that's what really matters. Because one of the reasons we don't talk about tariffs an awful lot on this station is just because of what you've just said. You've explained it very well, but it's quite complicated.
It's very complicated.
And for most people, it's not something that they want to get their heads around first thing in the morning. What they do want to know is whether or not the price of their house is going to drop dramatically, or the sale of goods that they buy on a general basis is actually going to go anywhere. And that's kind of where we are at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, and you had, one of the key figures behind Apple had said, look, the price of an Apple phone could go up to $3,000 if it's produced in America.
Right.
The price of trainers could double, because you have to, of course, factor in the wage cost of Americans.
But, of course, meanwhile,
the
people who run Apple will still be living high on the hog, and they won't be worrying about anything anytime soon.
Well, they will with their share price going up by 15%.
Well, exactly. But you know what I mean? I mean, these companies that say, we'll obviously have to double the price. And you go, well, there are ways of not screwing the public, just because, the idea that if somebody had come to you 25, 30 years ago and said you're going to be paying £2,000 for a phone, that you'd have gone, that'd be ridiculous. I can buy a computer for that, which indeed you can. So, the world is a strange and unusual place, I find.
But I think a lot of Republicans thought if there's a lot more we want to do with the country rather than just deal with tariffs, and if we go in with a recession to the midterm elections and we lose in Congress, then Trump won't have the support in Congress if there are too many Democrats there to put through all the other things, DEI, migrant stuff, all that sort of thing. It all depends upon this, so that's really important. Also, a bit of a contradiction here with tariffs. Does Trump want tariffs to actually bring back manufacturing to America? In which case, why would you lower them? Or do you want them as a negotiating tactic? That's not really been clarified too much.
I think it's a bit of both, really, and we've been talking about this now for about a week. week because nobody could be very sure. But what you can be very sure about is that there are plenty of pundits all over the place who are going to give Trump a chance to succeed or not give him a chance to do anything. And an awful lot of the coverage this morning is about whether Trump is weak and whether Trump has done the right thing and whether they've called his bluff. All of these things are true. And meanwhile, we wait and see, because it's what I keep saying to people about the whole policies that are coming out of the White House.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the people that I've spoken to, there are two types of tariffs. There are the big shock tariffs, which are a negotiating tactic, and then there's the baseline of 10%.
Yeah.
Everyone from the UK to Iran. And I think that may be the tariff that stays, actually, in order to encourage investment back into the country.
I think
so. But the crazy ones of, 84% or whatever it is in Cambodia, those are the ones up for negotiation.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk about stories that people will care about, because yesterday we did a huge show on all manner of things related to this reopening of the opening of the next great big British theme park, and we had a lot of fun with it. Keir Starmer seems to think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, because it's the only thing that he's actually managed to produce out of anywhere that looks like good news. But of course, it was nothing to do with Starmer.
Exactly.
It was actually Tories who actually found the space to build this place. Let's have a look at what Starmer had to say yesterday.
I've got two children, one 16, my boy, and one 14, a girl. They don't take that much interest in the announcements I'm making every day, I have to admit, but this one has really caught their eye because they can envisage themselves at this theme park like millions of other children for decades to come, coming and enjoying it. So I look forward to being here, seeing this roll out, and then, of course, come to fruition. But this is a really, really good day for the country, but particularly for Bedford and the local community, which is going to absolutely be turbocharged by what's happening here today.
Well, first of all, it's not going to be ready until at least 2031, so he won't be in office by then, so I wouldn't worry about that. Presumably his kids will have a special fast track to get to the rides before everybody else, along with Rachel Reeves. She's excited about it as well.
Now, I know that I'm not going to make any apologies for focusing on the numbers. I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer, but even I will take a moment to also acknowledge that the thrill and the excitement of this theme park for all of the millions of families that will experience it is also a wonderful thing to bring to our country.
Do you think there's anything wrong with her? Why is she so excited? Was she 10?
Well,
it's a theme park! Oh, I'm the Chancellor! And she certainly won't be the Chancellor in 2031, will she?
Well, Rachel Reeves knows all about this sort of thing because she's taken us all on a white-knuckle ride with the economy, hasn't it?
Well, one of the suggestions...
Rachel Reeves, spiral of doom.
Yeah, well, one of the suggestions for a ride was going to be the Rachel Reeves roller coaster. It only goes down.
Exactly, the spiral of doom, I think, would be a very good one.
Doesn't come up and finishes up in a £22 billion black hole. You never see it again. But, I mean, aside from that, when you look to other things that are happening around there's something wrong with I think politicians who look that happy in the midst of what is a global economic slump, you might say, which might not be anything to do with them, but a lot of the British economy and the reasons why it's in a slump are to do with their policies. The fact that we've got an immigration crisis, a housing crisis, a refuse crisis in Birmingham, which none of them seem to be doing anything about, they look incredibly happy, don't they?
But I think that's precisely the point. They've talked down Britain so much.
Yeah.
They've talked down the economy. She's created this, catastrophe we've seen in the last few months since she announced her budget, that they have to go for every little scrap, every tiny morsel becomes a Michelin-starred five-course tasting menu.
And there's not many, are there? I mean, this is the first morsel that they've actually had. Because, if they do end up creating 28,000 jobs, fantastic. It's good news for Britain. If there is £60 billion coming in inward investment, also good news for Britain. There's no point in pretending. But, it's got nothing to do with the Labour government. It all happened before they got in.
Yeah, precisely. And potentially good news for our steel industry as well. But, you're quite right. But it also goes to show how few and far between these things are. You know, that they're latching onto this and making it into such a big thing. There was a time when you would get these things, fairly more frequently. Yeah. It's the rarity of it now.
Yeah, you'd give it to, the Secretary of Trade and Industry or something to go and unveil it. Or, maybe even Culture, Media and Sport. But Lisa Nandy apparently is on the outs, isn't she? So they don't like her very much. And normally they'd give it to her to unveil. But instead they pull out the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer to announce that we're opening a theme park. I mean, talk about fiddling while Rome burns. You know, meanwhile, there's rats scurrying around in Birmingham, bigger than cats.
Well, it also just highlights, the lack of substance and the joke nature of our government and politics right nowadays. That is basically going down basically to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. I mean, what happened to the coalition of the willing? That seems to be put on the back burner so we can all have a nice big long ride on the Big Dipper.
Exactly.
You know, what's going on? Maybe you could invite all the European leaders over and put them all in a sort of, you know, one of those things that drops down really quickly.
Put them into the love tunnel.
Yeah, the love tunnel. Yeah, the ghost train. I mean, there were so many jokes on this yesterday. You know, the ghost train that's actually got a replacement bus service because they can't find any drivers.
Oh, I thought Putin would jump out at some point when they're on it.
Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Jay.
Morning, fantastic show as always. I think there's a lot of people missing the point with these tariffs and what Donald Trump's doing. Now, you've got to remember, China have just done a huge exercise surrounding Taiwan and been out to the Australian Sea, opposing sort of like military threat to the island. Now, you might think, what's that got to do with tariffs? Well, if you slow their money down, okay, you slow their military down. Everything costs. I think there's a bigger picture to this that people are missing.
I'm not surprised that you would say that, Joe. I think you may well be right. And I think, you know, there's so much going on. There's so many moving parts to this story that it's almost impossible for anyone to predict where it goes. And so for everyone who's making a judgment that it's either good or bad, I think it's a bit premature. I think you sort of have to ride the wave as you would at the old theme park and see what... I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I'm a tariff expert. I'm certainly not going to pretend that I know where this is all going to end up. But I suspect in the end it will be a good thing. Just because the whole world needs to have a reset in some sense.
Yeah, this is going to end in a renegotiation and it's going to end in a good place. It's a question of how bumpy the ride is going to be and how many casualties there are going to be along that ride. Yeah. One of the, I've also said it's very risky to go to war with China on trade, given how much debt they owe, but also China is very different in its reliance on America to how it was under the first Trump administration. It's only got 14% of its exports go to America, so it's no longer as dependent upon it. So that's also a factor which actually makes a lot of argument why this is going to come to a happy resolution at some point.
Yeah, absolutely right. We've got lots more to do. We're going to talk about this police story this morning in Yorkshire, blocking white recruits because they want more diversity, believe it or not. We're going to talk about the passport tax, which is going on. That's a Talk exclusive. Passports are going to cost you more money to leave the country now, basically, than it does if you want to come here for free on a dinghy. We'll also find out what the NHS is up to, cutting 300,000 people at a stroke off the waiting list. There's still, don't worry, another 7 million to go. This is Talk.
Went online, was wearing a balaclava, was talking about this music in drill, and honestly, if there's anybody watching who has kids or grandkids who listen to drill music, get them away from it as quickly as possible. The kind of lyrics that this scumbag was putting out online was things like "stuck it on a man and watched him melt like Ben and Jerry's," "sharpen up my blade, I've got to keep those necessary," "stay alert and kept it ready, any corner could be deadly," "judge took a look at me before the trial even started and he already knows he's going to throw the book at me."
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 20 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Ray Parnell-Mancour is here. I can scarcely believe my ears last night. This story came out on Kevin O'Sullivan's show last night with Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, and the Telegraph have got it this morning. One of the UK's biggest police forces, we're talking West Yorkshire Police, preventing white candidates from applying for jobs as new recruits to its police constable entry programmes because they want underrepresented groups instead to be able to lodge their applications early. I mean, if this is not a racist policy, I don't know what is.
It's absolutely outrageous. And if you want to provoke tensions between racial communities within the UK, this is the way you do it. Keep poking the white British population. There's no surprise that you're going to get some, a diverse reaction towards this.
Yes.
And there's every reason to believe that they're acting unlawfully. If this is positive discrimination, it may well be unlawful, in which case you've got the police acting unlawfully. So who arrests the police?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's going to happen to them?
Where have you got to go if the police are actually behaving, as you say, outside of the law? It's extraordinary, isn't it?
And there used to be a time when if you were Eastern European, you were deemed to be, foreign and deserving of a leg up. Now, apparently, being Eastern European is just the same as being white British. Right. Anyone who's white, essentially, is disadvantaged under this. West Yorkshire Police has 19 DEI, equality and diversity officers, costing £1 million a year at the time that they're pleading poverty.
Yeah.
And outrageously, job applications are open to ethnic minorities for months, whereas white candidates are only given about 48 hours to apply for these positions. It's clearly racist, it's outrageous, and they say that they want to have more representation from ethnic communities, and not a single ethnic minority applicant apparently has been failed on the application test. Of course, sorry, I want the best people for the job. I want fit men usually. We have to have a discussion about whether women should be on the beat as well.
Yeah.
If you're and fat men as well. If you're not physically able to do the job, you shouldn't be doing it.
No.
If that means you're white, pink or yellow, I don't care.
Exactly.
I want people who can actually do the job.
But it may not surprise you to know that it's also a tiered system because, of course, Keir Starmer will say there is no two-tier justice, there is no two-tier policing, but they've literally set up tiers in this area to do it. One whistleblower claimed that black and Far East Asian candidates are considered particularly underrepresented. They're given a gold ranking. And then if you're in the silver tier, you go from just other countries in Southeast Asia rather than Far Eastern Asia. And then bronze candidates are more likely to be Irish and Eastern European. So they've got a three-tier system, and presumably the white people, generally speaking, are from even below that. So four-tier system in the police force. Unbelievable.
Yeah, white British don't even get a ranking. No, and that's how terrible the situation is.
You're not on the podium at all. You just don't get anything. It's absolutely extraordinary. And which leads us to the next most ridiculous story of the day, which is Hamas. I mean, I thought this was an April Fool yesterday when I got home. I was quite busy, had a busy afternoon. Got home, started going through Twitter, saw this story about a law firm based in South London, which appears to be acting on behalf of Hamas, a terrorist organisation, using the European Convention on Human Rights to challenge its proscription as a terrorist organisation in the UK. They've made some kind of legal application to Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to appeal against the government's designation of the organisation. They're basically claiming that because Hamas was elected as the government of Gaza back in 2005, even though they've never had an election since, that somehow makes them a legitimate government.
Yeah, well, ISIS calls itself a sovereign state, doesn't it? So does it mean it too now has the ability to apply under the ECHR for recognition?
Yeah.
I mean, look, this is typically what happens.
Surely this can't be legal either, can it?
This is what happens. Islamists and our enemies use our freedoms and liberties to work against the British state, or against the Western state. It's impossible to imagine Hamas having an ECHR or an HCHR in Palestine. You wouldn't get that at all.
No.
But they're happy to use our freedoms against us. And it just goes to show, of course...
While they're still holding hostages, let's not forget.
And when you have an Attorney General who seems, a pro-Palestine appeaser, when you've seen everything he's done has been anti-British in some capacity, Chagos Islands, everything else, you can easily see why Labour might actually agree with this.
Yeah.
The key point is here, you don't even need to leave the ECHR to throw out this. We are a sovereign state. You cannot enforce international law on a sovereign state.
Right.
Whatever the ECHR rules, you can just say take a long walk on a short pier.
But I think in some ways, maybe, this would be a step in the right direction, because if the ECHR even bothers to entertain this, or anybody representing it or associated with it, surely that will sound the death knell for it, and we can then say, look, if this is the kind of thing this organisation thinks is fair and just, even while, you know, Hamas is torturing and killing people in tunnels underneath Gaza, then there's clearly something wrong with the organisation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's precisely right. That's my next point. If this does ever go before the ACJ, and if they rule in favour of Hamas, oh my God, I think it'll be very difficult for any political party to actually, that's on the centre-right at least, to call for anything other than complete removal.
Yeah, of course.
And it may switch the dial on Europe as well when they see something like that.
Absolutely right. Just a couple of observations on the excited Labour cabinet members watching themselves, looking forward to an opening of a theme park. Mike, if Starmer's children have no interest in what he announces, and being that his son is 16, why would Labour want 16-year-olds to have the vote when they're not engaged with politics? From Mark in Bridgend, a good point. And Maggie says, notice the crowd behind them all look just as embarrassed and interested as I am watching these two clowns get excited over a bloody theme park. Well, indeed, while all sorts of other stories are going on, it's absolutely remarkable, isn't it? Ridiculous. Let's talk about the passport tax going up, because that's a Talk exclusive story that we've got here, and it turns out that it's now going to cost you more money to actually leave the country as a passport holder, obviously, than it will to enter the country on a dinghy, which I think is one of the many great anomalies of living in Britain in 2025.
Yeah, and it's just, again, you know, the poor beleaguered British person who's being, you know, burdened once again with yet another tax. Life's hard enough as it is. The one sort of bright spot is usually going away on holiday.
Yes.
If you're a family of 4 or a family of 5, this could put it beyond reach of some people, you know?
Well, the cost of passports has just gone up. Tens of thousands of illegal migrants cross the UK's open borders without paying a penny. But from today, the cost of a standard adult passport rises by £6 to £94.50. The fast-track service has soared to a jaw-dropping £222. So that's if you're in a hurry, and I know that most people don't have to do it that way. But families with kids are now taking children's passports £61.50 or £189 for a premium service. So if you've got like 2 or 3 kids, that's £200 just for the passports alone. Incredible.
Maybe people should just hire a nice little speedboat and go off across the channel. The French aren't very good at stopping boats anyway.
Yeah.
You won't get stopped either way.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the only good news is that if you have got a British passport, it's too expensive to throw in the sea because you don't want to have to spend another £200 to get another one. But the government claims the hike is needed to fund passport services, consular support overseas, and the cost of processing British citizens at all borders. Well, they don't process non-British citizens at borders, so presumably the cost has gone down.
Yes, it's funny how selective they are in who they choose to police. The innocent and the hard-working get policed. Everyone else gets a free ride. I think, look, enough taxes. The British people can't pay anymore. This is just another slap in the face, I think.
Yeah, I think so. One of my favourite stories of the day is buried away, actually, back on page 28 of the Mirror. And this one will just wind everybody up altogether. It's about transgender prisoners, right? Transgender inmates in prisons. According to a report, which has only just come out, they should be given free taxpayer money to buy wigs and underwear so that they can feel more at home in their new transitioned life. This is the HM Inspector for Prisons in Scotland who basically says we should be supporting these people on their journey, so they should have access to taxpayer-funded wardrobes of wigs and underwear.
To help to support them on their journey. Call me old-fashioned. If I was a transgender prisoner in a male prison, the last thing I'd want were knickers and a wig. I don't know. Is it just me? I think that might be a bit of an invitation there. And the thing is, how do you think British taxpayers are going to feel about this when we keep hearing about the crisis in our prisons? Yeah. They're overcrowded, there's not enough money to pay the staff.
They're overrun with Muslim gangs, we heard from Robert Jenrick the other day. I don't know how they would feel about the person in the cell next door wearing a wig and some fancy underwear.
But anyway, why do transgender people need to have a wig? You know, can't they grow their own hair? There are women with short hair going around. I don't know why there's this requirement that they have to have a bob, shoulder-length bob. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Or in fact, any sort of silk lingerie. I mean, well, they just wear regular underwear. I don't know. It's all very
But you've got a serial rapist here, David Smith, who's complaining that it's too difficult to source wigs and knickers in a male prison. I mean, it's just so bizarre.
It's just you could not make this stuff up. Let's get a voice note from James on the theme park.
Morning, Mike. James from the Philippines here. But I mean, who cares about a theme park? Nobody cares about a theme park in Bedford. We want more money in our pocket. That's what we want. We want to stop paying more and more council tax and tax to the government. We want money in our pocket to do what we want to do with it, not what the government tells us that we've got to go to some stupid theme park. It probably costs an arm and a leg to get there on a train, you know what I mean?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, they're supposedly expanding Luton Airport. I don't know if that's because the theme park's being built there. They're also supposed to be extending the railways so that they can go straight into this theme park. But, you know, the idea that the theme park is the big story of the week from Starmer is completely and utterly ludicrous, I think. But we've got much more to do. We've plenty to talk about, including the BBC putting their statue of the sex abuser Eric Gill back. Also, we'll get stuck into the rat tax up in Birmingham. And we need to talk as well about the NHS, because they've decided it's a great idea, as I've been suggesting for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, to cut the waiting list. Here's what you do. You just remove people from it. And suddenly you go, oh, we've cut the waiting list back. We haven't actually given anybody any more healthy remedies. We haven't actually cured anybody. We haven't actually managed to get any more hospital admissions going on. We haven't actually managed to get any more procedures being done. However, what we have done is you just cut 300,000 names off the list. It's 6:30.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:32. I'm Mike Graham, and of course Rafe Harlemanku is here as well. Tony says this: President Trump caved on tariffs. He bottled it big time. Well, I mean, Tony, I think, as I said before, you wait till the end of the resulting game and you see what happens. It's whether he caved or not isn't really the story. It's about whether the economies of the world are going to be any better or not. Any better. Morning Mike says Scottish. Has the time come when we can say black privilege? This country is doomed. And one from Chrissy in Spain, Christina, says, Morning Mike, we don't even have enough builders, plumbers, etc. to build our Angie's imaginary 1.5 million houses. Who the hell is going to build a theme park? Bob the Builder? What a bunch of planks. Absolutely great show. I love Rafe as well. Thank you for that, Chrissy. Let's talk about the NHS. According to the NHS, they're going to remove 300,000 people from hospital waitings as a part of a clean-up to scrap pointless appointments. I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks that one of the things I know that it's happening are people are getting given appointments and then having them cancelled, so they're moving from one list to another list, which makes it impossible for Wes Streeting to say we are reducing the waiting list. Well, this is another scam, effectively, because a lot of people have been telling me they've been getting letters from the NHS asking them if they still need their appointment. And if you either don't answer it or you do answer it and say, actually, no, I'm fine now, or actually the leg fell off and so, you know, there's nothing further you can do for me. This is their way of kind of, you know, tidying things up and making it look better than it really is.
Yeah, you're right to a degree, but it's true. If you don't need the appointment, then it should be released. I mean, there is a need for that sort of thing, and that's a lot of the efficiencies that they're trying to say here. There are lots of people whose symptoms have gone away because the waiting lists are so long.
But that's the point.
So you're waiting forever, and then actually the issues are gone, or you're dead.
Right, so but that's the thing. You know, a lot of the appointments were made when somebody did need them, and it tells you quite how bad things are. That now they no longer need them, either because you know they've gone into the next stage or whatever it is, or that nothing can be done for them.
Or some people have gone private because they don't want to wait that long.
That's the other point. Yeah.
So I think actually it is important that you do find out where there is, you know, because if people really are desperate for an appointment, and you're also getting surgeons seeing people for things that don't really need to be seen by a surgeon.
Right.
That's another thing that I think is very important. For example, they say, 600,000 people are waiting for gynecological appointments, and apparently 1/3 of those, or 30% of those, can go to other
now, of course,
health hubs.
Some of those women will now be past the age of conception. So now they've been waiting for so long. Don't worry, we can't have kids anymore, so we'll just not bother. I mean, it is remarkable, though, that this NHS system of ours is so inefficient that they have to actually do this as a regular thing in order to work out how many of the people waiting actually aren't waiting.
But it just makes you wonder why no one thought about this before. Why did nobody have a light bulb moment 10 years ago or 5 years ago and say, why don't we actually see how many people actually still need this?
Right.
Just checking everything is fine for your appointment, but do you still need it?
Right.
Simple question would have actually removed hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people over the last few years.
Exactly right. But I mean, what we also know is that there are two sort of different waiting lists. There's the initial waiting list, which is down now to about 7.5 million. But that's just for an awful lot of people, the first sort of consultation. Then there's a secondary waiting list for people who have had something done and are waiting for the next thing to be done. And there's about 10 million of them. So effectively, you're talking about possibly as many as a sort of, a quarter of the population at any given time waiting for an NHS appointment.
And don't forget how fast our population is growing in this country now. And it's being fueled by immigration, and most of those coming are not doctors and nurses.
Yeah, and let's talk about those rape gangs as well, because we spoke yesterday an awful lot about Katie Lamb. She was on Julie Hartley-Brewer's show, Shadow Home Office Minister, who made the most fantastic speech in Parliament following Jess Phillips' rather hurriedly and crude announcement that the government was not going to have a national inquiry into rape gangs, despite the fact that she is, supposedly the people's champion for women and girls, and she reads out every single year a long list of names of people who have been either killed or injured by their partners in domestic violence incidents, but apparently Jess Phillips doesn't care about young women and girls who happen to be white, who happen to have been abused by mostly Pakistani men.
Yes, Jess Phillips, great feminist pioneer, campaigner for all women unless you're a young working-class white girl who's been abused by Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, unfortunately. An absolute betrayal. Great thing in The Sun on page 2 about, Trevor Phillips, former head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, utterly condemning the government for this betrayal. And he's quite right. This is an utter betrayal of rape victims, and it's because, let's be clear here, Labour is petrified of the Muslim vote. It's seen that vote hemorrhage away. It's seen 5 Muslim MPs being elected. Angela Rayner, other people who you'd expect to be on side with righteous causes like this, their vote depends on Pakistani Muslims in those local areas. And so they've embarked upon a policy of appeasement. They are going along on appeasement. And as we know from history, governments that follow appeasement, it doesn't end well at the end of the day. And this is a truly shocking story. And there's another reason. We're always told, of course, that one of the reasons that you've had the Labour councils and Labour government cover up the rape gangs was for the sake of community tensions. They sacrificed poor British white girls for community tensions. There's another reason. We had on my think tank, the New Culture Forum, Roger Mia, a great campaigner and whistleblower on this, who said actually Labour councils were dependent upon postal votes collected by Pakistani Muslims. A great electoral fraud was going on, and this is one of the reasons why they're also afraid to have an inquiry, because these rotten Labour councils are dependent upon rotten votes that are coming in, from, including by some people who've been convicted and are now serving sentences for rape crimes, with some of those collecting these postal votes. So you have a Labour government coming to the defence of some rotten Labour councils. The whole thing stinks. And in terms of inquiries, there should be an inquiry into this decision as well.
Absolutely right. Well, even in the Mail today, Dan Hodges has written a piece, and you'd hardly say that he's not a supporter of the Labour government, but he said basically that we know now the ugly truth. There is a cover-up here, and ministers are complicit. He says at the start of this year, Elon Musk launched a sudden and increasingly frenzied attack on the British government over Muslim rape gangs, and he says when Musk first made that charge, it was nothing more than a wild conspiracy theory, but now it's not just a theory anymore. And so, if people like Dan Hodges have recognised that, then this is not a story that's going anywhere. It will be haunting this Labour government throughout its entire tenure as the government, and I predict that it will come back and bite them very hard.
Well, isn't that the golden rule of all things? The cover-up is always, nothing can be bigger than the scandal. I mean, it's the biggest scandal of the 21st century, the industrial-scale rape of young white girls, Sikh girls and Hindu girls in this country by Pakistani Muslims. But come on, it's so obvious and blatantly clear to everybody what's going on here. This is a cover-up, and you have to wonder, when they first agreed to have these inquiries, was this always the plan? Let's just wait until it dies down. Let's try and cover it when there's a big news story like Trump's tariffs. We can just pass this through. The manner in which this was announced announced in the House of Commons on a very quiet
40 minutes from the end of the session, right? So that there could be no real discussion about it.
Stinks to high heaven.
Well, Adam in Skipton is picking up on your theme. He says, call me cynical, but I find it highly suspicious that Labour made the theme park announcement the day after they told us there'd be no grooming gangs inquiry. Looks like them trying to bury bad news yet again. I think that's right. And Alan says, on the theme park front, where will all the profits go? Oh, yes, to America, because it's American-owned. We've got a new clip, actually, I think, of Starmer looking even more excitable. Let's check this out.
As you can imagine, when I took over as Prime Minister, people warn you that there are tough days that you're going to face. You know, responsibility for the armed forces, for fixing the NHS, sorting out the economy. So you can imagine that when someone comes and says, would you like to launch and open a theme park? That's a completely different day. And that's why I was so delighted when Mike came to Downing Street yesterday and we were able to shake hands on this deal, this new universal UK resort and theme park. What a momentous day. What such an important day.
How pathetic is that?
You think he won the World Cup?
Wants to open a theme park? He does. It looks like he's won the World Cup. It's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, what's going to be embarrassing is if the government can't build the infrastructure to bring people.
There's a pretty good chance.
There
is a pretty good chance that could be the case, because people pointed out to me yesterday, back in 2012, in all this sort of euphoria around the Olympics, there was a suggestion that a new theme park was going to be built in some part of Kent, which basically never happened. And about 2 months ago, the whole idea was decommissioned and kicked into the not in the long grass, kicked off the cliff. It's not happening.
Well, and we know about our track record on producing railway extensions and infrastructure on that level. Can we actually bring people in? That's what I want to know.
Well, that was going to be one of the rides as well yesterday, an HS2 ride, which doesn't really go very. You know, it goes 10 yards into the ride and then you stop and you have to wait for a bus to take the rest of the way.
And it's the most expensive ride in the entire theme park.
It's £1,000 basically. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Let's go a voice note from Neil.
Welcome to Starmerland, the future of Britain, where you can ride the Black Hole, the world's biggest roller coaster that takes you to oblivion. Try the milliband bumper cars that you have to pedal, and the aerial Lammy ride that takes you on a tour of the world in a private jet. Finally, don't miss Rainer Ranch, where you can see and pet the best animals that Ethiopia has to offer. Starmerland, the land of the future. All refugees welcome for free.
I can see the show now. It's a bit like Yellowstone, isn't it? Starmerland. It'd be great. People have got such a great sense of humour on this show. It's absolutely remarkable. Let's talk a bit about Birmingham, because there's now a rat tax, apparently, and councillors are getting all sorts of messed up about what's going on. They're saying that a couple of them have quit. A couple of them basically said that, the councillors got to do something, and something soon, before it all goes horribly wrong. The state of Birmingham these days is absolutely incredible. We're actually asking people today to send in pictures of what it's like in their street, because we're hearing from a lot of people that some of the streets are okay because some people can collect the rubbish themselves and take it to the tip themselves. Well, an awful lot of people, of course, can't do that, and we've got one story here this morning coming in from a councillor called Sam Forsyth has quit the Labour Party over a rat tax on residents, blighted by the ongoing bin strike, because she says she represents a western suburb. Has been suspended by the council's Labour group after not supporting budget proposals, which include £149 million of savings. And of course, the problem for Birmingham is they are pretty much a bankrupt council, aren't they?
Yeah, there's 21,000 tonnes. Imagine that, 21,000 tonnes of rubbish on the streets of Birmingham. Meanwhile, you've got people like Liam Byrne, MP for Birmingham, who famously said there's no money left. There's enough money to go on these jollies to Japan that he's gone on, rather than actually dealing, because his constituency is one of the worst affected by this. He's chosen to go on a jolly. But what's really remarkable here is that the unions themselves are against this. I don't think people actually realise this entire strike that's taken 1.2 million people, held them hostage, is only for 17 bin men. Just 17 bin men. Are being defended by the Unite union, and other unions. In fact, people within Unite are condemning the General Secretary of Unite for causing such mayhem just for such a very small number of people.
Well, even Angela Rayner came out over the weekend sort of in support of the council, to say that, because it is a Labour-run council, but it's quite surprising to see that the Labour sort of official cabinet members are not backing the Unite strike.
Well, it's just completely vexatious. I mean, when you have other unions and people within Unite condemning it, and the bully boy tactics as well, stopping
trucks from going in and out of the depot.
Coming in and out. I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous for 17 people.
But if you live there, you're now being charged £24.60 for pest control, and people who have been up there and seen what's going on have said, well, there is no pest control because the rats are literally running around the size of cats and nobody can stop them because people are frightened of them.
Well, I think maybe Unite should be forced to pay for this, given that it's the one that's caused all of this. Right. Maybe the union should actually have to pay for the damage they cause when it's clearly a vexatious platform.
Absolutely.
They're on.
So if you are listening and you are in Birmingham and you're watching the show from there, please do, by all means, send in your pictures. We did this a few weeks ago when we were looking at the state of Britain in general and the whole problem with fly tipping in Britain, which is reaching epidemic proportions. And in some parts of Britain, it's very obvious which communities are doing it, because an awful lot of communities are not very good at looking after their own rubbish, and that is part of the problem. So please do send them in. You can WhatsApp the pictures in 0344 499 1000. You can text them in to 87222 and we will publish them as soon as we can get them. One from Alan, who says this: my granddaughter is 4 weeks old and has been forced to pay £60 for a passport. Even at this early stage, she's contributed more to the country than the hordes of illegal immigrants. Gurdeep says this theme park, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think Starmer has a different agenda. The theme park is a smokescreen and a distraction from something else, and he also does things in secret, and then bang. And here's one from Phil in Coventry, who says, with all the ever-increasing taxes, who's going to be able to afford tickets to do a universal theme park? The one in Orlando costs £349 for each adult.
Maybe we need a universal credit theme park.
Yes, well, that was one of the suggestions yesterday as well. 349 quid. Imagine that. So a family of four, you're talking about, you know, close to 1,500 quid.
Plus train fares, which are another amount, and hotels.
Yeah.
I mean, you took best part of £1,000 quid.
Yay! Well done, Sir Keir Starmer. You know, this is absolutely a boost for everything in the country. Not.
But I'm sure migrants and refugees will get in for free.
They will do. Of course they will. They'll be arriving by the busload. That was another suggestion yesterday, was people getting taken from the car park to by shuttle bus to the main entrance. They'll all be clinging to the underside of the shuttle bus as opposed to actually sitting on it. Andy's got a voice note for us on transgender prisoners.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Rafe. Andy in Southsea. Just on the transgender prisoners, I mean, I just can't believe what I'm hearing. I mean, actually providing them with wigs, knickers, etc. I mean, it's so indicative of how woke our society has become. It's just madness, utter madness. And on the police issue as well, not taking on white people anymore. I think there should be more a case of not taking on fat little bloaters anymore, because that's what a lot of the police look like nowadays, short, squat, and they're always in the drive-through in McDonald's from what I can see. So yeah, keep up the great work, Mike. Fab show as always.
Yeah, you do have to wonder about the police, don't you? There was a terrible accident up on the A1, at the top end of the A1 up in Northumbria, where they don't know yet what happened, but like 5 police cars were involved in it, and they're all smashed up to smithereens. 7 people were injured, all police officers. Most of them, I think, now released from hospital, a couple with injuries still in there. But they were trying to box in a couple who were in a BMW, who have since been arrested. They were not injured, but it looks as though some kind of tactical police operation went horribly wrong. And the whole road has been, you know, closed off for hours and hours and hours and hours. And you have to wonder sometimes whether the police are not concentrating on what they should be doing, which is, you know, how to drive at speed, how to go after criminals, rather than making sure that whoever you hire happens to be of a certain colour.
Yeah, we've all our institutions, not least the police, have prioritised identity over excellence and competence for far too long, and you're seeing it in lots of areas. Also, the detection of crimes, that requires certain skill sets and so forth. And if no ethnic minority candidate is being failed when they apply, it does raise questions along these lines. As I say, if you're in frontline policing, you need to be just be physically fit to do the job and capable of doing it. I don't think women should be in frontline on the beat. I don't think people like me should be on the beat. I'm not capable of, you know, stopping a crime or running after somebody. Right. I think, you know, you have to be physically up to the job, and I'm not quite sure that that's always the case.
No, I think that's right. A lot of people would probably agree with you. 6:49 coming up. We've got much more to talk about. Things that you say or do that make somebody know that you love them. It's a very strange story out there this morning. We're going to be talking about that. We'll also talk about the migrant boats as well, because we'll have Migrant of the Day. We'll also have a conversation about Prince Harry, who apparently is now busy in court saying his life is at stake, and that's why he needs to have more protection, even as he walks out of the court with protection. This is Morning Glory. Back after this.
This is a time when people are not necessarily comfortable making significant investments that are reliable on disposable income. And as we know, we're all becoming much more economically sensitive on our spend. The beauty about this, however, is recognizing from a UK perspective, this is spectacular news. Because when you look at the fundamentals of a tourism economy, which the UK very much is, it really does help in terms of strategically building the UK in tourism, because it's pushing people out of the main cities.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Rafe Heidelman-Q is here from the New Culture Forum. Let's get a voice note from Judith on Hamas.
Hello, it's Judy from Altops, West Yorkshire. It's illegal to give money to terrorists, so shouldn't it be illegal for them to pay these solicitors for representing them? One should imagine it would be. I mean, I know it's never stopped this government from sending money to Afghanistan, even though it's run by the Taliban. But I would have thought it were illegal, and please tell me they're not getting legal aid. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not getting legal aid at this point, but it wouldn't be surprising if they ended up somehow, figuring out some way of getting public funds for what it is that they're doing. What I can tell you is that apparently one of the lawyers involved in this company was, shall we say, not exactly unhappy at what happened at 9/11, and he issued a statement about it at the time, which would lead you to believe that, he's not exactly sympathetic to the victims of terrorism everywhere in the world. Let's talk about the migrant of the day, because it's time to do that. Greek migrant Sally Dragodi has been allowed to stay in his country after a generous judge ruled that his removal would breach his human rights because he's a convicted drug dealer, but COVID apparently made him poorer. So he had to become a drug dealer in order to actually keep himself above, the poverty line. He's a cannabis dealer, spared deportation after claiming he only committed the crime because he ran out of money during the COVID pandemic.
I mean, what can you say to that? I mean, it's just they're making a mockery of our legal system at these things. And it's almost as if every day you're getting one of these nonsense stories.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to think. There must have been one other job he could have done.
Exactly.
Flipping burgers somewhere, perhaps sweeping the roads.
Exactly right. Also, they're not sending him back to some god-awful part of, darkest Africa where he's likely to be murdered by, the Hutus or the Tutsis or some, opposing tribe that, don't like him. He's going to be sent to Greece, where quite a lot of people from here go on holiday every year.
Yeah, and there are enough, there are enough kebab shops around you can make a nice hero.
It's absolutely and utterly extraordinary. Meanwhile, we hear that despite all of the thousands of people that have come here this year on the small boats, the great big crackdown on stopping the boats has only managed to actually convict 5 people who are piloting these boats. There we go, 5 people. What I've never understood is if somebody brings this boat into the shores of this country, or indeed they get picked up in the middle of the channel, surely the person who's driving the boat is the person that you arrest. I mean, I know they all get arrested, but they all get distributed around the country. But we should surely be arresting and charging all the people who are actually bringing them here illegally, shouldn't we?
Absolutely, absolutely be illegal. What's their defence? Oh, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't realise that there were 16 Eritreans behind me on this boat. It's completely indefensible.
I mean, but this is the thing. I mean, it's roughly one a month.
But, the Labour Party made such a big deal about smashing the gangs. Well, I'm sorry, if this guy's not a member of the gang, he's at least aiding and abetting a gang. So what's happened with that? I mean, it's such a ridiculous position to be in. Yeah. There are so many of these boats that have been seized. You've got the RNLI picking up these boats almost on a daily basis. Yeah. Who the hell's in charge of these things?
I know. And why is it that these people cannot be... And one of the questions I've also had for many people unanswered is what happens to the dinghies once they get here? Do they get towed somewhere? Do they get punctured? Do they get resold back to somebody else? Do they get sent back across the channel? Nobody really knows. There's a whole industry going on here that none of us really know much about.
Well, along with Tesla and Apple, we should be buying shares in dinghies.
Dinghies? Absolutely right. I mean, probably made in China, funnily enough. Maybe we should put a tariff on them. Maybe that's the way to stop them. So, the dinghy will now cost £750,000 as opposed to, whatever it is now,
I think you've just solved the crisis.
I think, maybe that's the way to go. Let's talk about Eric Gill. This is a statue. You'll be familiar with it, as I'm sure anybody in London is. Outside of Broadcasting House, there's a statue which depicts Prospero and Ariel from The Tempest. Some people think that, although it is a beautiful piece of art, that it does have sort of slightly unsavoury connotation, shall we say, because it's a young child naked in the statue depiction, because of course Eric Gill was a paedophile.
He was a nasty paedophile, incest as well, bestiality. Yeah. I mean, really, he ticks off 3 of the boxes. The top boxes there. A vile cretin, despicable man. Yeah. But of course, this is the age-old argument. Do you separate a man's art from the character and personality? There are many, many musicians and artists who have actually failed the morality test over the years. Do we then never play their music again?
I mean, I suppose there's a difference, isn't there, for me anyway, in the sort of the level of depravity, I suppose, and maybe that's a bit of a hypocritical situation, but if you're going to say, well, Picasso wasn't very nice to women, that's probably a bit different from Eric Gill having sex with his dog.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, I don't know whether it does affect the ability to produce great art and artwork. Look, I'm a historian. I'm a traditionalist. I love art and architecture, especially in London. But I was never a great fan of Eric Gill. Actually, I don't actually like his sculpture, so I'm not that bothered by it. Although I probably should be on a point of principle. But I think Eric Gill also did the Stations of the Cross in Westminster Cathedral, the centre of the Catholic Church in this country as well. They still seem to be up on the walls there, if I'm correct. So I don't know. I, for one thing, you can separate a man's genius from his actual personality.
I don't disagree with that principally, but I just think that in some cases the crimes committed may be so heinous that you might say, and in this case we'll make an exception. It doesn't have to be black or white.
We just had a big slavery audit, right? Where we've seen all these things coming down because of alleged links to slavery and so forth. Do we want to have another audit where we go back through centuries and say, this chap perhaps was guilty of paedophilia or this, therefore let's remove his portrait? I think it's hugely contentious.
Yeah, interesting.
And a lot of time's gone past. If this chap was still alive, it would be another issue altogether.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, basically, the BBC unveiled the statue yesterday. It had been sort of covered up because somebody had attacked it with a hammer. And no doubt, I suppose, I mean, this shouldn't be a reason not to put it up there, but probably somebody will attack it again, I guess. And then that question will be, is it really an appropriate place for it to be? I mean, that's the other thing.
That's the more valid question.
I've got no problem with people wanting to look at this guy's sculpture, but should the BBC necessarily be using it as their sort of flagship emblem on their flagship building. Possibly not.
Yep, you may have a good point there.
We shall see. Let's get a voice note from Angela on the theme park. Still going to theme park.
Andrea here. Our kid is naming one of his roller coasters after me, apparently. He's called it the Easy Ride. And then you and your guest the other day, you were taking the mickey out the way I say Ethiopia. Well, can't you spell Mike? It's E-F-F-O-P-E-R. Oh, I'm dead hurt.
Very good, Ange. Thank you very much. That's Kitty normally, calling yourself Angela for the time there. Rafe, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Another busy day here at Morning Glory. We'll be bringing you more news and more views and absolutely some of the most ridiculous stories you've ever heard, all coming up very, very shortly after the news right here on Talk. We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down. This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We've already done one glorious hour. We've got 3 more glorious hours to go. This is the one show you need for the commonsensical approach, of course, because we are not only the world headquarters of common sense, we are the place the nation comes to talk. More and more of you sending in pictures of your bumper stickers on the back of your car, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for that. What we'd also like from you today, we're asking you for a couple of other things, particularly if you live in Birmingham, where the rubbish is piled high, 12 feet deep, sometimes 15 feet deep, any advance on 15 feet deep, rats scurrying around everywhere. The Birmingham Council completely and utterly bankrupt, straight out of ideas as well. They don't know what to do, but we need to see exactly how bad it is where you live. We'll be exploring that a little bit later on. The local MP, Liam Bird, is in trouble this morning because he decided to take a jolly over to Japan while the crisis was ongoing, and he hasn't actually been doing much to try and solve that. So we'll be talking about that too. Lots and lots of big stories around this morning. Most of the front pages all guaranteed on Trump and the tariffs. The war goes on. He's increased the tariffs on China, doubled down on China, but eased up on everybody else, basically. And a lot of the papers suggesting that Donald Trump has blinked first in order to save his own stock markets and to save some stock markets around the world. And certainly the stock markets did rally late yesterday, so that looks like good news for people who are invested in such things and whose pensions might be bouncing back a little bit this morning. We'll also be talking about a whole series of massive stories this morning all over the front pages of the papers, including the front page of The Sun, where they've got a Chelsea player, Moises Salcido, found that he was driving a supercar without a valid licence. He was nabbed by the police last Friday near the club's training ground in Cobham. He now faces a court summons for driving illegally in the United Kingdom. It's always amazing, isn't it, these footballers? You would think, get yourself a chauffeur or just get yourself a licence. For heaven's sake, you can afford to buy a car worth about 600,000 quid. I think you probably should be able to drive it. We're going to be telling you why Hamas are now being represented by a South London law firm of human rights lawyers who want to use the ECHR to basically change the status of Hamas so that it's no longer regarded as a terrorist organisation in this country. We're going to tell you about how the NHS is cutting 300,000 people at a stroke off the waiting lists of this country because apparently they no longer need their surgery. So if you're one of those people, you can tell us why you no longer need the surgery that you were supposedly waiting for. 0344 499 1000. Also, police blocking white recruits up in West Yorkshire Police. Absolutely extraordinary story. Broken last night here on Talk by Kevin O'Sullivan and Isabel Oakeshott. We're going to be carrying on with that investigation because apparently they don't want white police officers anymore in Yorkshire. They want people from ethnic minorities. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. 0344 499 1000. More stories and more news you can shake a stick at. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And of course, yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, we spent an awful lot of time having an awful lot of fun talking about the theme park and what sort of rides could be on the theme park. And many of you came up with some brilliant suggestions. Here's a voice note from Brian.
Hello, Mike. Brian from Southend. On the Universal theme park, you know, look at Starmer. You know, what an idiot he looks. He thinks he's pulled up some sort of coup by getting this theme park. You know, it's an embarrassment. People look at him and thought, is he really that excited about a theme park when everything else around him's going on? You know, and has anyone else sort of clicked on? You know, they want to expand Luton Airport, you know, build a new runway or extend the runway. Oh, that just happens to be a few miles, you know, from Bedford. I wonder what the net zero lobby thinks of this, you know, because, you know, you're going to have to fly a lot of people in to fill that theme park, and it's going to be very expensive, you know. Let's see what Ed says about it.
Yeah, I don't think Ed's too happy. He hasn't said much for a while, really. I think they've sort of put Ed under the bed for a while to keep him cold for the next time. They need to wheel him out for the next climate conference, which I'm sure will be within about the next 4 weeks or so. But yeah, they love an airport expansion. I believe they're not actually building a new runway at Luton, it's just a new building. But they're certainly up for the new runway at Heathrow, and they're certainly up for a new runway at Gatwick. So there's new runways all over the place. And 387 quid is what it will cost you to go to the Universal theme park in Florida. So who knows who's going to be able to afford to do it. Just before we talk to James Price, political commentator, let's have a look at Keir Starmer and just imagine that this man is the Prime Minister of this great country of ours.
As you can imagine, when I took over as Prime Minister, people warn you that there are tough days that you're going to face, you know, responsibility for the armed forces, for fixing the NHS, sorting out the economy. So you can imagine that when someone comes and says, would you like to launch and open a theme park? That's a completely different day. And that's why I was so delighted when Mike came to Downing Street yesterday and we were able to shake hands on this deal, this new Universal UK resort and theme park. What a momentous day. What such an important day.
What a momentous day, indeed. Those people behind him don't look like they think it's very momentous. They look like they wish they'd be pretty much anywhere else rather than standing behind Keir Starmer. What a momentous day. James Price is here. James, very good morning to you.
What a momentous day to be with you.
Oh, my God.
I don't know how we're going to have to do another 4 years of listening to his voice.
I know. Well, I mean, wait till you see the Rachel Reeves clip that I'm going to play. But I mean, we had a lot of fun yesterday doing, you know, what the rides would be on this new theme park. You know, obviously the migrant slalom, you know, down the old rapids. You know, we've got the, you know, the Rachel Reeves roller coaster of doom that only goes down, never comes back up again. You know, the list goes on and on and on. It was some people were being very clever about it. But, I mean, what on earth is he thinking? Why? It's not even a Labour policy. It's not even a Labour project. It was started years ago. There's no actual news whatsoever about when the first sort of spade will be dug into the ground and when the work will actually begin. There's no chance of it being ready at the moment before 2031. So why is he getting so excited about it?
That's a very good question. I mean, I suppose an insight into how government works. You have grim issue to deal with after grim issue to deal with. And I've got sympathy for anybody in these sorts of positions, especially when you're the Prime Minister and you get questions that come to you. By definition, those questions are ones that couldn't have been and haven't been answered by anybody else on the way up. So you've always got kind of 51 to 49 style calls to have to make.
Yes.
So when there is something with a vague glimmer of joy in it, I can see the sympathy here of kind of jumping on it, going, well, actually, this will be nice. The problem with Starmer is that even things he actually really cares about, we know he does actually care about football, for example. When he talks about it, he sounds like a politician talking about football because he thinks that's what, quote, the masses care about. And it's the same here. He's incapable of expressing joy in any authentic way whatsoever.
And that is what strikes you about him, doesn't it? Because it's very much a robotic kind of response to almost everything. He doesn't appear to have a human bone in his body. And the more he tries to look human, the less human he looks.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And in an era where I think the amount of social media that's around, the fact that every single person has a mobile phone in their pockets where they can record things all the time and share all their thoughts and all the rest of it, the kind of old stage managed idea of how politicians work. People who are watching this at the moment can see Starmer and Rachel Reeves standing there awkwardly having something explained to them. That kind of wooden performance just doesn't really work anymore. When you've got Trump, who is so eager and happy to take every question under the sun and talk for hours and all the rest of it, I think we're going to start craving people who've got a level of authenticity. We believe are real people who actually mean what they say and actually think about things and care about things, because we've seen so little of that for so long.
Well, because also when you see, and some people have already mentioned it to me, the grooming gang scandal, the grooming gang's shame, which a lot of people are calling, including Trevor Phillips, who's hardly, you know, a rabid Tory looking to attack the Labour government at every opportunity. You know, they do this the day after a really, really cynical announcement that was made literally 40 minutes away from Parliament closing for Easter, that we're not going to do a grooming gang inquiry. We're just going to let the local people take care of it. We'll give them the money, they can spend it in any way they want. Jess Phillips, the woman who's meant to be the great saviour of women and girls in this country. And you just think, you know, are they really that cynical? And I'm beginning to wonder if they are.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And there's a perfect example. Anybody with a single shred of humanity would look at the issue of these disgusting, evil, mostly Pakistani-led rape gangs that are still going on to this day. Let's not forget about that. Would put politics aside, right? There's plenty of time to hammer the Tories on it later down the line if that's what they want to do. But to put politics aside and be like, my God, is it really this bad that in over 50 towns and cities across the United Kingdom, stuff that we're not going to mention on air today, but the most awful stuff, hopefully more awful than any viewer or listener can actually imagine has been going on, and yet they're not going into it. Where is the humanity in there? And as you say, I thought it was a bit of a conspiracy theory that they weren't doing it because they thought it might hurt them electorally. I think now they're relying literally on the Muslim rape gang vote in order to get re-elected next time round, and that's so easy.
Isn't that just dreadful? What a terrible thing to have to think about. Have a look, though, in the context of all of that, Rachel Reeves, who's actually worse, I think, in this one than Keir Starmer.
Now, I know that I'm not going to make any apologies for focusing on the numbers. I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But even I will take a moment to also acknowledge that the thrill and the excitement of this theme park for all of the millions of families that will experience it is also a wonderful thing to bring to our country.
I mean, she literally can barely contain herself. It's like, what are you, 10? You know? It's a theme park which you've got nothing to do with, the money from which is likely to be siphoned out into the American economy because it's owned by an American company. I mean, you know, it's just, it's beggars, but I can't quite believe my eyes when I see that.
Yeah, you're right. Rarely, Michael, you and I lost for words, but I think when Rachel Reeves tries to show genuine human emotion,
Yeah.
it leaves us absolutely begging for
I mean,
belief.
considering her job has been pathetically done, has driven the economy of the United Kingdom down into the gurgler, basically. It's practically dead and moribund, and yet here she is beaming as if somebody's literally handed Britain, you know, a sort of a package of goods and services which is going to rescue us from this economic depravity that we're stuck in, and suddenly everything's going to be fine again. Well, it isn't.
No, absolutely right. Well, this is the woman who, let's not forget, after her budget and after her spring statement, each time making things worse, going on and on about growth and making it patently clear that she doesn't actually know what growth means or what is required of it, because she went and asked, well, the regulators, how they would go and deal with growth, not the people that run businesses, whether small businesses or large businesses. She doesn't know how to do that. She obviously fibbed on her CV about her own level of qualifications and experience. Someone who went off to China and gave away God knows what, and probably allowed them to build a huge spy base in the centre of London in exchange for, what, 600 million quid, something like that, which is a rounding error and all these things. And then you realise, let's not forget, she's the best they've got. She's the only person in the Labour front bench with any private sector experience, half as much as she said that she had, because she lied on her CV. But she is the best they've got. So if she goes, heaven help us who comes along next.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Another announcement from Starmer yesterday is that he's going to make, I think, a proper announcement today. Police forces are going to have dedicated teams of officers focusing on patrolling town centres at peak times. I don't know what he means by peak times, but he's basically going to say he's going to end the postcode lottery by ensuring that every community has specialist neighbourhood officers. Well, if you live in West Yorkshire, I'm afraid you'll only be recruiting black police officers or ethnic minority police officers, because white police officers have been banned from applying for jobs.
It's quite extraordinary, this, isn't it? And I think this is a result of a whistleblower as well, that this was an internal thing. So it's bad enough if you say, well, you know what, give them some attempt at credit. I can see an argument that says if you send a load of white blokes into areas in West Yorkshire, which is now, there are parts that are heavily ethnic minority majority, put it like that, as there are increasingly in central cities across the UK, which is its own, I think, issue, because when recent arrivals turn up, they've got no need to try and assimilate or even learn the language. That's its own problem. But and there tends to be lots of crime in these areas. You send a load of white officers in, I can see how that can lead to tensions, and I can see the benefit, perhaps, of people who, after years and years of being told, your ethnicity is the most important thing about you, which I think is an evil thing to teach, but that's what lots of people think. Seeing police officers who look like there might be a useful thing, but to do that at the detriment of white policemen, white British people who want to become policemen and keep streets safe, is obviously both racist and evil. And I was going to say I can't believe it's happening in Britain today, but of course we.
Well, you know, and I would say that I can see your point, but isn't that how we got to where we are, for example, with the grooming gangs? Because we also know that an awful lot of the police officers who operated in some of those areas were complicit not only in covering up what was going on, but in some cases taking part in it as well. You know, regardless of whatever their ethnicity was, you know, that's an issue as well. And I think you've got to be really careful that you don't allow these individual communities to become, you know, little ghettos in and amongst themselves, because that's where problems really begin to take hold, and you've suddenly got a country which is entirely, you know, sort of compartmentalised up. So that, you know, over here, this is where these people live, and then over here, this is where these people live, and we'll have to have different police forces to police the two, because obviously, you know, some people might not like white police officers. I think that's dangerous ground.
You couldn't be more right. That's exactly right. I was trying to get into the mindset of why people would want these things. And as I say, after years of being told from school all the way up that your race is the most important thing, or your religion, or your whatever other sectarian leanings, and that to be British is terrible because Britain is an evil place, you know, that's what people have been taught. And if you would just really upset people now, I was listening yesterday to an academic called David Betts, who is a very sober, serious guy who spent his career looking into civil conflicts around the world. This is what you'd think in developing countries. And he has come to the conclusion that all the conditions in Britain and in other Western European countries are getting increasingly apt for there to be lots of civil conflict between kind of urban areas and rural areas as time goes on. Because exactly as you say, we've got this increasing sort of South Africaization or Lebanonization of our polity, where you see people from different backgrounds, very, very recent arrivals. Let's not forget 1 in 27 people living in the UK have come here in the last 2 years. and those people are concentrated in big cities, and that's creating a big difference with those in rural areas who are being told, no, you can't be a police officer, mate, because you're white. Terrible conditions.
And as if that story wasn't enough to get everybody cooking on their breakfast table this morning, the one that I find perhaps the most bizarre of the day is this law firm in South London who are taking on the government over Hamas. And they've actually issued a video in which they say, we are instructed by Hamas as a law firm, right, to try and remove the terror status of the terrorist organisation by petition, and if necessary, by using the economic or the European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
It really, really is. And I'd advise people, if they want to get their blood pumping, go and watch the video that these clowns put out. 3 of them sort of walking in slow motion.
Yeah.
The Home Office. Like, it's all some kind of funny, jolly jape. And it is so ridiculous that you think it's a kind of April Fool's joke and all the rest of it.
That's what I thought.
But then think if you're a Jewish Brit or a gay Brit, because we know what Hamas does to gay people, or frankly, anybody who believes in any shred of civilization, having seen what Hamas does, that there are people walking amongst us who want Hamas to be made legal again and for them to be able to operate and do the evil, horrible things that they do in this country. And last week, we saw one of their sister organizations, Hezbollah. There were 2 people who were arrested and accused of trying to start a Hezbollah cell in Britain. What happened to them? They were released on bail, all the while Lucy Connolly is rotting in jail, writing hurty words online.
Yeah, it is absolutely incredible. Well, as we were saying, there are more people now demonstrating against Hamas in Gaza than there are in London. You know, and that's where we are in this bizarre, upside-down, topsy-turvy world. James, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. James Price, political commentator there, with just a taster of some of the things that are going to rile you this morning. We're going to try and keep things in perspective and try and keep a sense of humour around the theme park. But let's get a voice note from Nick on Starmer.
Morning, Mike. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. Keir Starmer is a strange man indeed. Is there any evidence, anecdotal or video or otherwise, of him actually performing in court? Because I can't imagine him actually holding an audience, let alone a jury. He's about as inspiring as an empty bin bag. I'd be interested to know if there is any evidence. Have a good day, Mike.
It's a very good question, Nick, and I've often said I can't believe that this man was ever a working barrister. He might have been a man that sat behind a desk. It might well be that he was running the CPS with an iron fist and all of that, and he's very good at prosecuting people. But I can't believe he actually did court time, because if he did, surely he'd be better at communicating than he is now. Because he looks like, for all intents and purposes, he's made of wood, and he's got a robot with his hand up his back, trying to get him to talk in a way which is in some way human. And when he starts smiling and kind of looking pleased with himself, it's quite cringe. It's awful. I don't understand how this man could ever have had a career in the law. I know plenty of barristers, and they're all interesting. Some of them may not be very nice people, and some of them you may not enjoy some of their views, but they are all very interesting people, and they are all very lucid and very capable of holding anyone's attention when they speak in public, out loud. Starmer can't do any of that. I don't know where he came from. Where did he come from? 22 minutes past 7.
I think he was making two different points. The first of those was in solidarity with a man called Salwan Momika, who had burnt a Quran, was being prosecuted for this in Sweden and was murdered. The second point he was making was a protest against the Islamization of Turkey. Now, it seems we've got a pretty serious problem with the Islamization of the CPS at the rate at which they are pushing these cases, and with the police, particularly, it seems, in parts of northern England. So those were the points he was making. They're both completely legitimate points to make in a democratic society.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Steve says we all know the main reason behind this two-tier, openly racist West Yorkshire police recruitment. It's happening because they fear losing control in certain areas and communities, and they're too scared to simply enforce the law using the best officers based on ability rather than their ethnicity or religion. And Mark in Somerset says, Mike, regarding a policy of only hiring ethnic minorities, do you know if we're the first country to do this, or has this been trailed somewhere else? Good question. Well, I know a man that can answer it very possibly. Mike Neville's here, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, there's a few extraordinary stories around today, but none more really than this one that we got last night. It was on Kevin O'Sullivan's show with Isabel Oakeshott, who's written it in the Telegraph as well. West Yorkshire Police preventing white British candidates from applying for jobs. I mean, sounds barely legal to me, but why on earth would they think this is a good idea?
It's absolutely crazy, Mike, isn't it? We saw Cheshire Police in 2019 found guilty of racism against a white applicant. We all know about the RAF scandal recently, where the female group captain revealed about the discrimination against white candidates there. And just again this year, Thames Valley Police were found to have discriminated against several white officers who had applied for jobs. And can you imagine if a chief constable or a senior RAF officer, they were found guilty of racism against black people? They'd be sacked, but there's no consequences. This at all. And just by way of an example, Mike, I read the last report. All these police forces are inspected. And the last time West Yorkshire Police were inspected, they were solving less than 5% of crime. And they were told that their response to investigating crime needed improvement. Now, what's happening here, they're focusing on all the wrong things. Because no one ever says to me, oh, do you know, when I reported my burglary, I didn't like the sex or the colour or the sexuality of the officer who turned up. What they say is that the officer didn't do the right job. They didn't seize the evidence, didn't look at the CCTV, they didn't solve the burglary. That's what the police should be focusing on, and they're focusing on all the wrong things.
Yeah, exactly right. Because, I mean, you know, we've already seen Keir Starmer make out that, you know, there's no such thing as two-tier policing. Well, according to those in the whistleblowing department in West Yorkshire Police, it's not two-tier policing, it's four-tier policing, because they've got separate tiers depending on which part of the world you happen to come from, right? The top tier, which is a gold standard apparently, is if you're coming from Far East Asian countries, which I presume they mean from that, you know, maybe Hong Kong, I don't know if they mean China by that, followed by those from Southeast Asian origin, who I presume they mean Indians and Pakistanis and possibly Vietnamese or something. Then the third tier, the bronze tier, white others from Irish and Eastern European backgrounds, and finally white British come in fourth, not even on the podium.
It's truly shocking. What they think they're doing, they're thinking they're improving trust and confidence in policing it. They're not improving it at all. All they're doing is sending out an awful message that they're causing division in all this. And it's just, and the law is very nebulous as well. You've got this positive action, which is legal under the Courts Act, and then positive discrimination, which is illegal. But they're so confused, these two terms.
All of these things should be banned. We should be selecting the best people to be in the police force who are going to make us safer, not what they look like, who are going to make us safer, solve more crimes, catch more criminals, and prevent crime happening in the first place. These are simple things to ask. But the focus of the elites who run this country are not focused on what the public want.
Yeah, exactly right. And meanwhile, later on today, Keir Starmer's going to announce, he says, more police officers to be required to patrol busy areas on Friday and Saturday nights throughout England and Wales from July as part of Labour's crackdown on antisocial behaviour. And again, if it happens, then probably a good thing. But will it happen?
Well, will it happen? It may happen, but all that happens, Mike, is that the police rob Peter to pay Paul. I'll give you an example. In the Met, they have officers, about over 300 officers, who are part of a safer schools thing, who go into these schools where there's all sorts of knives and trouble and deal with it. So Starmer is committed to having more neighbourhood police officers. So all the Met have done is taken all those 300-odd officers out of safer schools and put them into the safer neighbourhoods, because it's no good saying the police are going to do all these extra things. They're not doing the basics at the moment. So they're solving less than 5% of crime at the moment. So moving it around, unless you provide extra resources and you make sure that those resources are spent on catching criminals, not on employing diversity officers or whatever else they're doing this week, nothing will change. The police will just move things around. It's like changing the deck chairs on the top of the Titanic, to be honest.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, because where would they get? I mean, we saw just last week, the Metropolitan Police cutting numbers and actually taking what I thought was rather strange and unusual views of things, like, for example, taking more people out of the armed response units and taking more guns off the armed response units in order to make sure that they didn't lose too many police officers walking around in London. But it sounds as though they don't have enough cops already, so how are they going to put more cops out on the streets at the weekends when people, presumably in this country, don't want to work weekends? I don't see that happening.
Exactly that. They'll just change things around. But the Metropolitan Police still has a commander, chief superintendent and 20 officers employed full-time in this diversity directorate. Now, that's their view. They think that's really important. What do your listeners think? What do your listeners and viewers think? Would they rather have that commander, very senior officer, and all those extra staff dedicated to catching burglars, thieves, rapists and muggers around London? I'm sure that they would.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, under this Labour government, they support it at the highest level. So I just can't see things changing, and they're just moving things around, and nothing is going to get better.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like that, does it? Because, you know, certainly people say to me, regardless of what the figures say, despite what the statistics say, which in some cases unbelievably go, oh yeah, well, crime's definitely coming down. You know, certain types of crime definitely going up. You know, shoplifting is out of control. You've got, you know, stabbings happening all the time. Just last weekend there was another young teenage black boy stabbed to death in West London in Shepherd's Bush. You know, a teenager arrested for that. You know, I mean, the list of crimes like that, which are quite visible and make people really sit up and take notice, happening more and more.
Exactly, man. When they say crime's going down, what they're talking about is reported crime.
Yeah.
And what happens is that people give up reporting it. So, for example, people used to report burglary because they wanted the police to catch the burglar and get their television back or whatever had been stolen. Now they report burglary because they want a crime number, because the insurance will pay out. They don't have any ambition that the police will catch the burglar or get the stuff back. But if you're poor and you live on a council estate and you're not insured, why would you bother reporting it? There's no purpose, because one, you don't think the police are going to catch them, and secondly, you don't need a crime number because you've not got insurance.
Yeah. Also,
and so
it's
the
not that
crime
easy.
figures are manipulated.
And it's not that easy to report anyway, because you have to go online to do it. You know, I famously have told this story till I'm blue in the face. When I had my phone stolen in front of the eyes of a police officer in a van, he basically said, the best thing for you to do is report it online. I couldn't report it to him.
Exactly. And Mike, what was your concern there? Was the officer white or black, gay or straight, tall or thin, fat or whatever? No, you weren't. But all you wanted was a decent service. That officer should have put you in that van and said, right, Mr. Graham, we're going to drive you around, see if you can spot this criminal. And do you know what? Even if you couldn't have spotted him, you would have gone away thinking, do you know what? The police really tried their best there.
Yeah.
No one expects the police to be Sherlock Holmes and solve every single crime, but they do expect them to make an effort.
Yeah.
And one of the nicest letters I got once is like, a man was mugged. I tried to find the robber. I showed him all the photographs. He picked somebody out. I held an ID parade. He didn't pick the man out. But I got a nice letter because he knew everything possible had been done and he felt a service had been given.
Yeah.
And the police are losing that. And like I say, West Yorkshire Police, do focus on investigating crimes because that's where you've been criticised.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Mike Neville, thanks very much indeed. Former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector there on exactly what is going wrong with the police in this country and why, being managed by complete and utter numpties, they've now decided it's a great idea in West Yorkshire, for example, to not hire any white recruits because they want more ethnic minority representation. What an absolute and utter shambles. Kevin in Sheffield says, morning, Mike. How can so-called British lawyers that hail from one of the most democratic countries in the world, i.e. us, even consider taking up a case for a prescribed terrorist organisation? I'm ashamed at what is happening in my beloved Britain. Hard to believe. Absolutely hard to believe. We've got the video. All right, let's have a look at the video. This is the law firm who are involved in this.
We are instructed by Hamas. We are today at the Home Office and we are going to hand in an application under Section 4 of the Terrorism Act to have them removed from the list of prescribed organisations. We have the application in here which contains very, very strong legal arguments grounded in national and international law, and we're about to hand it in to Yvette Cooper and ask her to have some courage and make the correct decision.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's some people being tortured and murdered in the tunnels underneath the streets of Gaza by Hamas, a terrorist organisation, a bloodthirsty, ghastly, throat-cutting, raping terrorist organisation. Unbelievable. Let's get a voice note from Pete.
Hello, Mike. Pete from the Isle of Wight here. Reference to cutting these waiting lists. Wonder how many of them people have actually died while being on the waiting list, but Labour are going to claim a victory as in, well, we've reduced the waiting list now. They've died. Never mind, eh? Keep up the great work. See you, Mike. Bye.
Pete, I think you make a very good point. I mean, it's very clear, isn't it, that 300,000 people whose names are being removed from the waiting list will either have, died. That's very much a possibility. Some of them may no longer be sick enough to need the operation because something else has happened to them. Many of them may have gone private. But the whole idea that the NHS didn't know that these people were not any longer in need of an operation is staggering in itself, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. Derek in South Wales says, morning, Mike. Who's going to build this theme park when we're told not enough tradespeople are here to build the millions of homes needed to house the rubber boat criminals? Why is Starmer so excited about this rubbish when the country's down the pan? Well, it's a good point. I mean, what is wrong with Keir Starmer? Why can he not see that being ridiculously overjoyed at the opening of something which is so far away that quite a lot of people will never see it is in any way a good look? It just isn't. 7:36.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:38. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Fiona in Leeds says, surely lawyers working for Hamas are breaking the law, aren't they? Well, I would have thought so. I don't think you can be in the pay of a terrorist organisation. And surely I would have thought the Bar Association might have something to say about it, because also they say quite openly, we are instructed by Hamas. You know, they're not being instructed by, I don't know, some kind of charity that wants to try and see whether Hamas can be cleared as a non-terrorist organisation and instead be called a government. They're not being instructed by some organisation out with Hamas. They are being instructed, as they say, by Hamas. Seems remarkable. Let's get a voice out from James.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. Oh, Rachel and Kia, they're very excited, aren't they? Whee! I'm off to a theme park. Whee! Yeah, whatever. You'll be getting free tickets for it, I'm sure. And the thing is, you can be as excited as you want, but no bugger's going to be able to afford to go to the theme park because none of us have got any bloody money. Keep up the good work, Mike.
Well, if it's anything like the Universal theme park in Florida, it's cost about 379 quid per person, I have to say. Laney in Essex says, Mike, glad we're getting a new theme park, somewhere new for the migrants to go. They're probably bored of the free Premier League football tickets. Bless them. Great show. And why do we need a theme park, says Peter in Norwich, when every day we're all being taken for a ride by the Labour government? Go well. And Darryl says, morning, Mike. Starmer sounds like an excited 5-year-old boy. This place is an absolute joke. Well, goodness gracious me. I mean, there's so much news going on. I don't know where to begin, really, or where to end. LaDonna Harvey's here from Arizona, KTAR in Phoenix, to be precise. LaDonna, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. If you've been invested in the stock market, you've been on a hell of a ride in the last couple of days.
Absolutely right. I mean, it's never a dull moment, really, is it? I mean, you wake up every morning without any idea what's likely to happen, you know. And this morning, all the papers here have got Trump blinking. They've got him sort of backing down because he got frightened off by the debt in America and by all the bondholders and all the rest of it. And people have been quoting from Margaret Thatcher's mantra, which is, "You can't beat the markets."
Right. It's, you know, did he blink? I don't know.
I don't think it matters really, does it?
Exactly. It's, you know, we've just been sort of watching this wild ride on Wall Street with people's retirements and 10-year treasury bonds soaring and then dropping, right. And nobody really knows what to do with their money. And it's, I don't know if it's as much him doing anything as it is the rest of America going, oh my God, what is going on here?
Right.
And maybe a little bit of that kind of came through and he thought, well, you know, maybe we'll pause stuff for a little while. Because I think the ultimate end game really is to get China under control. I don't think it really had anything to do with anybody else except China.
Yes, and that may well end up being the end result, you know, because in the analysis of all of these things, I mean, we had a guest on this morning who started to explain and he explained it very well, the international sort of trade situation and how tariffs work and how, you know, bonds get sold and how debt gets bought and how and halfway through it, I was just thinking, it's so dull, this. It's really boring. Nobody really cares. I mean, you care about your pension, you care about how much, you know, groceries cost at the supermarket, you care about how much your fuel costs for your car, but most people don't care about tariffs. They don't want to know about, you know, what happens in Wall Street or Main, you know, the FTSE 100, because nobody understands it.
It is very difficult to understand, you know, but the bottom line is you have a very large contingent of Americans whose retirement is in the stock market, and they just watched precipitous drops in what is available to them. And the closer you are to retirement, the more panicky you get when you see these kind of wild fluctuations on Wall Street. So people are interested in as much as how does it affect me? And, you know, I mean, that's pretty much our how you gauge your interest on anything that's going on in the world. How does this affect me? And, you know, can I make it work to my advantage a little bit? But
of course, as usual, and I'm sure you're suffering the same fate over there, you have the usual sort of pundits in this country who either hate Trump or love him, and who, you know, characterise what's happening through the prism of Donald Trump's personality. And that's not really what's useful to people either, you know.
No,
so this is why I don't care whether he's blinked or whether he's strong or whether he's weak or whether, you know what I mean? It's like, just wait and see how it all turns out at the end of the day.
Well, and it's funny because he is such a polarizing personality that Americans kind of fall into those two groups as well. So you listen to the pundits if you hate him, who hate him, and then if you love him, you listen to the pundits who love him, and you don't really get any great information out of either side because everybody's got their agenda, their bias walking into the conversation. You know, the bottom line is that, you know, the man is doing what he thinks is best for America. And these tariffs were a big part of that whole package. But what was the end goal? And, you know, with him, I always say, if he's got his right hand up, you need to be looking at the left.
Right.
Because he's doing something else over here that doesn't have as much to do with what's going on over here as you think.
Right. And I mean, the last time I looked, and it was before all of this tariff madness started, he was doing pretty well in the polls. Is there any evidence that that's not the case now, or is it changing?
It definitely changed. You know, when you have retirees watching their dwindling savings, they start to panic. And so his numbers have gone down commensurately. If this evens out and we regain some of those losses on the market, I think that, you know, as usual, you will see an uptick. It's all about economics for Americans. It's all about the money and how much do I have to pay for groceries and cars and how much do I have to retire, and am I going to have to choose between cat food and medicine?
Yeah, and is there going to be a sort of long-term future for my investments? Because in America,
exactly.
One of the things that struck me when I first moved to America in the 80s was people were a lot more across the idea of having investments, even ordinary working people, which in this country wasn't really the case, you know, 30, 40 years ago. People didn't really have, you know, any stock at all. They didn't really have a retirement income. They didn't really have anything. They just had what the government was going to give them when they finally couldn't work anymore, you know. So it's a much more sophisticated electorate, if you like, in America.
Well, you know, certainly I think maybe a little bit more savvy than people who don't invest. So I've been, you know, a casual market watcher for probably the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years, you know, and I keep an eye on it because my retirement is tied to those accounts, and I readjust some of the investments and even ask professionals about it.
Yeah.
So you end up learning almost by osmosis. And, you know, what I saw happen in my 401k gave me gasp, you know, for a couple of days, but you always know, look, you're in this for the long term, not the short term. And so these spikes and dips like this, you don't pay as much attention to them. It's, you know, you're after long-term growth. So,
and it's not always easy to do, but you just have to, you know, grit your teeth and shut your eyes and carry on. That's how it goes. Exactly. So, but the roller coaster, I'm sure, will continue, and we've got plenty of room for it to continue for quite a long time to come. That's what I know. What can you tell us about Universal theme parks? Have you ever been to one? Because we were apparently going to get one here.
Oh, yeah, I've been to the one in Florida, which is very large and very expensive. And if you have children, it's going to cost you to take them there.
Yeah, I'm assuming somebody said it costs about like nearly over £300 a time per person to go to these places.
Yeah, the Disneylands and Universal Studios are getting very, very expensive for families, and mostly seem aimed at tourists and not really the people who live, you know, in Orlando or in Anaheim. They're aimed at international travelers who have lots of money.
Yes. Well, they won't have much money by the time Trump's finished with them, so we'll see how that all turns out. But there we are. Thank you very much indeed. Donna Harvey from Arizona Morning News at KTAR in Phoenix. Absolutely bang on about how much it's going to cost everybody. And so when they build this theme park, despite the joy with which Keir Starmer announced it and the absolute elation that appears to be running through every vein of Rachel Reeves's body, it's actually not really for us. It's for a load of foreign tourists, because they're the only ones that can afford it. Probably from China, mostly. Let's get a clip of Donald Trump talking about tariffs.
I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, you know, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable.
And so the wagon train rolls on. We'll see what happens tomorrow, basically. We'll see what happens today, but certainly the Asian markets are coming back. Imagine the FTSE will come back a little bit this morning. We'll keep you abreast of that as it happens. It's 7:48, though. Coming up next, Michael Cole joins us. Prince Harry apparently has been telling everyone that basically his life is at stake. and that's what his barrister has to say. So that's why he needs all this protection that he keeps saying he needs, even though he's already got it. There's a talk.
When you heard that yesterday from Jess Phillips, the self-styled I stick up for women, what does that do to your gut at that moment?
It destroyed me. My stomach turned. I've met with Jess. I've met once at Westminster, and I met her a month ago in Manchester. I feel absolutely manipulated. Not by just Jess, but the Labour Party.
Did you believe... See, I'm really mystified by Jess. Somebody said just now that you could see with her body language in Parliament yesterday she didn't want to do it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:51. I'm Mike Graham. Fred here says this. He says, that cretin Starmer announcing the theme park development, behind him was all women. Are no men to be employed there? Well, I don't know. Morning, Mike, says Barry. On the theme park, nice to see the South receive more investment. Just what it needs. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't call Bedfordshire the South. It's north. Certainly north of North London. Morning, Mike. Just enjoyed the clip of Starmer in Bedfordshire with sound down. Absolutely deranged. That's all. Carry on, says Howard in Suffolk. I mean, he is. He does look like a man possessed, doesn't he? Just looks ridiculous. Crazy, mad. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about the Birmingham rubbish dumps and the rubbish mountains. That was one of the suggestions as well yesterday for the theme park. Never mind Space Mountain, rubbish mountain, where you go down it in a sort of luge where you're trying to avoid all the rats trying to jump on and bite you. That's what we're dealing with here. But let's have something slightly more off to the side, shall we? Michael Cole's here, real commentator and writer. Prince Harry's back in court again. He's been over for the last couple of days pleading for more appeals in his case against the government and the Home Office for protection. He walks into the court with protection, he walks out of the court with protection. While he's in the court, his barristers argue for why he needs more protection, because apparently he's frightened to bring his wife and children here. So I don't know, this is likely to go on past the Easter recess, apparently. They're not likely to make a decision, I don't think, anytime soon. Let's find out what Mr. Cole makes of it all. Michael, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Well, of course, this is an unprecedented case. It's unique. You have the King's younger son suing the King's government in the person of the Home Office. And his barrister yesterday made the point very strongly, Shahid Fatima, King's counsel, she said that his life was at stake. And she said that parts of the Muslim community would be pleased by his assassination. Well, the origins of that, of course, lie in the book Spare, which was ghostwritten by an American journalist but was his story. And in that, he admitted or boasted of having killed 25 Taliban when he was in the front seat of an Apache helicopter during his tour of duty there. Very unwise thing to say, which was condemned by various generals and other senior military people at the time, which more or less painted a target on his back and of his family. Very, very unfortunately. He served the country well, but he should have kept his mouth shut on that particular aspect of his service. That's not what soldiers do. So that is the position. But as you so rightly say, when he comes to this country, he gets security. It's bespoke security. It's decided on the level of threat to him. But he wants round-the-clock security, which is what he had when he was a fully functioning working member of the royal family. That, of course, all ceased in February 2020 when Brexit happened for him, and it was called Mexit. He and his wife went off first to Canada and then to California, which may have been her intended destination all the time. So when he comes back to this country, he wants round-the-clock security. The Home Office said, no, we'll give you the security that we think you need. He's appealing against that, and the 3 appeal court judges will rule after Easter whether his appeal
But
has
this is
been
all
successful.
costing the taxpayer quite a lot of money as well, which is a consideration as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think we should be spending money on him. I think he should be done for costs. If he loses this appeal, I think they should seek costs from him.
Well, I think that's what's happening. The Home Office, I think, is going to be looking for costs against him of 1.5 million. He has lost 3 court cases, had a bit more luck lately, and one case was more or less scrapped. He's the prince of litigation, and he, of course, has his own very substantial costs in bringing this case. There's no doubt he feels very sincerely about it. He sat there in the court and he listened to everything. Incidentally, it was in Court 73, which was the courtroom for the inquest into the death of his mother, 2007 to 2008.
Interesting.
He sat there and listened, and his barrister very eloquently made the point that he was there to show his concern about this. Now, I think that's to his great credit, that he's concerned about the security of his wife and his family and himself. And obviously, that is important if he wants to bring them here more to see his family. Hasn't seen his father.
Well, he didn't see his father, did he, when he came this time?
No, he didn't. I mean, he hasn't seen him since, if you remember, that flight, night flight over the pole to get here after the King's cancer was revealed last year. And he arrived, and the King stayed at Clarence House, waited for him. They had a short meeting, just over an hour, I think it was, before the King flew off to Sandringham.
Yes.
He wanted to express his concern about his father, and that's to his great credit, of course, and quite natural. And I'm quite sure that the King would like to see more of his grandchildren in California, who he sees very, very rarely.
He's hardly seen them at all, really, ever since they've actually been born. Well, I mean, Harry didn't even think of bringing a nice little package from Meghan's latest venture. He could have done. He could have brought the runny jam, according to the Mail. This is Maureen Callahan writing in the Mail from New York. Runny jam, bland cookies and tea that tastes like hot water. All for the sumptuous price of what looks like about 44 quid for those 3 items alone.
Well, perhaps that's why apparently Meghan has said to friends that she's expecting to be a billionaire one day. So with prices like that, probably the profit margin is quite healthy. It's quite interesting. She, of course, has been doing all sorts of things, podcasts and so on and so forth. And I can't imagine that she will actually stifle her political ambitions. She has obviously big ambitions. And perhaps we've seen, of course, in the past, people from the acting profession do rather well. Arnold Schwarzenegger comes to mind. And then, of course, Ronald Reagan, who was, of course, governor of both of them, governors of California, have gone on to do great things. So maybe that's what she will do. She will surprise us.
I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. I mean, she's proven herself to be very good at starting things up and not finishing them. You know, almost every project that she launches gets a great big fanfare, and with every kind of next launch, it gets slightly lower and slightly lower and slightly lower. I mean, the Netflix show has disappeared without trace already. It's only been out a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, but they had a huge contract. As far as I remember, it was more than $100 million to do these various projects. Whether they succeed or not, presumably that contract is solid. And their Archwell Corporation seems to be doing things on different sides. I mean, let us give some credit to Prince Harry. He served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. He was an asset to this country.
A lot of his former colleagues are not very happy about what he's been saying since then, though.
No, I think, Michael, you're absolutely on the money there. That's absolutely right. There we are, the 2 brothers together, a helicopter. There he is out there. I think that was on his first tour when he was a forward artillery spotter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, Michael, people are just sick of him whinging all the time. That's all he seems to do. You know, people had a great deal of time for him. You know, those times, I think, have gone. I don't think he's going to get them back, and he's certainly not going to win any friends by continuing to sue the government at taxpayers' expense, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. I mean, it is extraordinary that this should be going on. It's an indication of his concern about his own security. But as you say, I mean, he should be paying for it. There's nothing to stop him doing that.
Exactly right. Michael, we've got to run. Thanks. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Michael Cole, royal commentator and writer. Lots of you have got plenty to say still about the theme parks. We're going to talk to Peter Hitchens coming up in the next hour. We'll get from him what his view is about it all. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Back after this.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
A couple of weeks. Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. It's looking a bit dull outside. It was a bit chilly yesterday. The temperature's going to be a bit higher today, but still, you might still need your coat if you're going out and about, because it hasn't quite reached the heights of the earlier part of the week when the sun was out. Blazing sunshine. It was absolutely brilliant. Lovely. When my family were here, it was absolutely fantastic. We've got Phil, who's got a voice note for us right now on the Birmingham bin strikes. Here we go.
Hi, Mike. Phil in Nottingham here. Just a quick one on Birmingham. I'm a lorry driver, driving past Birmingham as we speak. I've just come down to junction 7A, where the M42 and the M6 merge, and it smells like a landfill site. That's out on the M42. on the outlet which goes around Birmingham. You can actually smell it. Mate, it's unreal.
That's disgraceful, isn't it? How disgusting. I mean, we're living in Britain in 2025 and you've got rubbish piling up on the streets. You've got 12-foot, 15-foot high mountains of rubbish, garbage on the street. You've got rats running around, giant rats running around, foxes, all kind of manner of vermin. People are unable to get their stuff to the bins. We're asking you this morning, if you are in Birmingham, to send pictures of exactly what you're seeing in your street. Just how bad is it? Is it in every single part of Birmingham? We're hearing it's not. It depends on certain parts of the city where some people are better at taking their rubbish to the tip. But it all sounds like a horrendous, ghastly kind of Armageddon-style situation in what is modern Britain. I'll tell you what else is driving me insane about modern Britain, and that's a bunch of lawyers, human rights lawyers based in South London, who have been instructed by Hamas to take on the Home Office to try and get their terror status changed, to try and get their terror status lifted so that they are not any longer considered to be a terrorist organisation. I find that extraordinary. Meanwhile, as if that's not enough to drive you insane, we've got West Yorkshire Police who are no longer recruiting white people because they say they want more ethnic minorities representing the people of West Yorkshire, which just sounds like for me, a recipe for disaster. We've also got a great NHS story. 300,000 people are going to be wiped off the waiting list in one stroke simply because they don't need the operations anymore. Why? Because some of them have died, some of them have got better, some of them have gone private, some of them just don't need the operation anymore because it's gone too far for anything to be done about it. That is the reality. We want to hear your stories on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Oh yeah, and on the tariffs front, some of the markets are coming back, so don't worry, don't panic. Just wait and see. As I keep saying about Donald Trump, it will all come out in the wash. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Oh yes, and Keir Starmer, very excited about a theme park that isn't going to be built for years and years and years and isn't going to benefit anybody in this country. Marvellous, isn't it? There he goes. Yay! This is Morning Glory. Welcome to Morning Glory. It's 6 minutes past 8. We're here until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along shortly thereafter. She'll be telling us what's coming up on the show as well. Right now, it's time to talk to Peter Hitchens, a man of great common sense. I'm not quite sure where we begin today, Peter. We've got sort of Britain on the brink. You know, we've got the world on the brink. We've got Birmingham on the brink. I mean, it's anything from micro to macro, whatever you like, really.
Well, we are on the brink, aren't we? And we have been for some time. And I've said for many, many years that it will only take one major economic shock to set this country into a very, very serious downward spin. And I have to say, yesterday evening, I was worried that we might have reached that point. I still am, actually. I don't think that there's any real sign of anybody intelligent or rational in charge in the White House at the moment. And such things can lead to very bad consequences. And you look at events like the horrible Birmingham rubbish strike, and you see what a civilization looks like when it begins to fall to pieces. Now, in this case, it's just a labor dispute, but other things can cause these crumblings of our civilization to happen. And one of them, of course, is the complete shortage of money. The grave danger which continues to exist in this country and is always looking over our shoulder is how long will people in the rest of the world continue to have trust in the pound sterling. And if they stop trusting it, then it would presumably melt away here as well. And we live miles beyond our means at the moment.
Well, I was going to say, one of the
things...
things...
We're only able to do this because of the continued fantasy that this is a major healthy economy, which it quite plainly isn't. And last night did make me worry quite a lot that we were on the road to some sort of economic and social meltdown, which haunts me all the time.
Yeah, because it seems to me that one of the reasons why Trump did what he did yesterday was nothing to do with the stock markets per se, but it was everything to do with the debt markets and everything to do with the amount of debt that not only is the United States in, but the rest of the world is in. And that's what makes it all so precarious, it seems to me.
This governs all major countries. I think it was James Carville, Bill Clinton's man of business, who pointed out that basically Clinton couldn't do anything if the bond markets wouldn't let him do it. Because this is the place in which governments borrow the money with which they carry out their activities. And if the bond markets start charging too much interest on what they lend to governments can't function. And that was what was coming out, that the forward rates of interest rates on American Treasury bonds were going up at an alarming rate. And I think that's what caused Donald Trump to reverse. Presumably his advisors were rushing in and out of the Oval Office saying, Mr. President, it's all very well about the art of the deal and all the rest of it, but on this occasion, you really have to listen. And otherwise he'd be Liz Truss. The problem with the President of the United States, of course, is unlike Liz Truss, if everything collapses around him, he's still in office. Yeah. He can't easily be got rid of. And this would have left us with a really, really odd situation of a president who was responsible for a disaster, sitting in the midst of it and still at the head of the American government. I don't know quite where that would have gone, but it still seems to me to be a risk. I don't get the sense that reason is in charge in the White House at the moment.
No, but I guess one of the things that you might say, or at least I might say, you might not agree with me, is that it appears to be a bit more transparent. You know, you see what Donald Trump says, he does what he says, and then something happens. Whereas an awful lot of leaders over time, and I would count a lot of European leaders in this, have kind of secretly operated a kind of a black economy, if you like, of debt that they haven't really told anybody about. You know, like we hear the Labour government saying, oh yeah, we've just borrowed another 17 billion this month, but don't worry, that's not going to make any difference to your lives. And you're kind of going, well, you know, like you, I sometimes sit up late at night and go, well, where is this all going? And how much longer are we going to be doing it for? And when does it all end?
It's true that we have a lot of bad governments over the world, and ours has been for a long time one of those governments. As I say, we actually borrow money to pay interest on our debt, which if you knew of any individuals who did that,
you wouldn't.
They were in deep trouble.
Yeah.
It's hard for me, looking at it from across the Atlantic, to develop a preference between a president of the United States who's obviously far too old to be in the job and a president of the United States who doesn't seem to really understand how the world works and treats the world economy as if it were a deal to buy a skyscraper in Manhattan, which it isn't, and it can't be run that way. I don't know. I don't think he knows what he is doing, and I think people are beginning to realize this. So now what? You have, for nearly 4 years ahead, a man in the Oval Office who doesn't know what he's doing. Is that preferable to a man who doesn't know who he is? Which is what we had for the previous 4 years.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, maybe he does know what he's doing, but he's a gambler, I think. That's the thing that people find that makes it all so very uneasy, because I think they don't like a gambler. Yeah. But, you know, at the same time, would you rather... I mean, I don't know what the answer is to this, really, because, I mean, most of the people in the White House have been, in one way, shape or form, deficient, either as moral characters or as liars or as, you know, pretend, you know, Democrats when they really weren't. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect leader, is there?
No, of course not. But I think the system by which American presidents and indeed politicians in general in the United States are selected is worse than ours, but ours is developing in the same direction, is a very bad system. And it ignores the reasonable and the thoughtful and the knowledgeable in favor of those who come over well on the Joe Rogan show, for instance. Now, is that really how you want the world to be governed? Because somebody goes over well on Joe Rogan? I don't think it is.
I think I'm less concerned about that than I am about the way that we are going here in this country. When I wake up this morning to see that there's a law firm based in South London who represent Hamas, who are instructed, as they say, by Hamas, a terrorist organisation, who wish to try and remove their prescribing as a terrorist organisation by the Home Secretary. I think we've got a little clip of Riverway Law. This is who they are.
We are instructed by Hamas. We are today at the Home Office and we are going to hand in an application under Section 4 of the Terrorism Act to have them removed from the list of proscribed organisations. We have the application in here which contains very, very strong legal arguments grounded in national and international law, and we're about to hand it in to Yvette Cooper and ask her to have some courage and make the correct decision.
And surely if they're instructed by Hamas, that's not legal, is it?
Well, I don't know. I'm not clear on the law of what a designated terrorist organisation can do, or whether lawyers can be employed by it. But I seem to remember some time ago, I dug out an old American State Department document on designated terrorist organisations, and which included, of course, the Provisional IRA, whose political wing are now welcome in the White House and Downing Street and everywhere else. And I said, how long will it be before the State Department does to Hamas what it's done to the provisional IRA. The status of terrorist organization is not one which is necessarily firm. And the history of the Western governments, really, since the 1960s, has been that ultimately they give in to terror. I mean, remember when Yasser Arafat was regarded as a terrorist leader, he ended up as a supposed esteemed world statesman. So don't be surprised, is what I say. And remember also how we went on and on about how very much we were against al-Qaeda, and then we helped propel al-Qaeda into power in Syria. So these guys have obviously spotted a trend.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I agree with them, because I
but it's kind of extraordinary in its way, isn't it?
No, it's not as extraordinary as you think. It's not that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I mean, Hamas is not fighting for the freedom of anyone, but for their right to tyrannize over whoever they rule. But it is true that yesterday's terrorist is tomorrow's statesman, as far as respectable international politics is concerned. And I make this point because people constantly seem to assume that there's some kind of moral sense driving international politics. There just isn't.
No.
We do business with the people it suits us to do business with. We do business with the military junta which rules Egypt, which shot down democratic protesters on the streets of Cairo because it suits us to do so. We do business with Saudi Arabia, which is the most appalling tyranny because it suits us to do so, while prosing on about how much we disapprove of tyranny in Russia. I'm afraid this stuff doesn't really make sense. As I said before, the only morality in foreign policy which can actually operate and work is to ensure, as far as you possibly can, the safety and the prosperity of your own citizens. Everything else is humbug. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if eventually Hamas and several other organizations now listed as terrorists don't become internationally respectable because it happens to suit the major powers that they should be so. They won't have changed. It'll be us that will have changed. But remember, I was reminded of it this morning by somebody on Twitter who claimed that I'd been in some way compelled to do it. On the contrary, I volunteered. I have spent, what is it now, nearly 27 years pointing out that in 1998, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland surrendered to the Provisional IRA at a ceremony in Belfast. And the consequences of this are absolutely disastrous. And people go on and on about how they don't like appeasement. It's one of the biggest instances of appeasement in modern times, where you end up with Martin McGuinness in white tie and tails having dinner at Windsor Castle. Martin McGuinness, a very proficient and undoubted terrorist whom we regarded as our dangerous enemy for years, actually invited into the establishment, and his organization allowed to get pretty much what it wants. And as time passes, this will be so. And still, if I say in public, actually, the IRA won in 1998, people say, how can you possibly say that? The IRA lost. And all. Well, how is it in that case, if they lost, that Martin McGuinness ended up having dinner with the Queen?
And why is Sinn Féin a stronger political organisation now than any other in Ireland? And why is Ireland getting closer to a united Ireland?
I believe it's the only political party in these islands which is allowed to raise money abroad.
Interesting.
Another interesting feature of our life, which people don't notice enough, which is, of course, one of the reasons why it is so powerful.
Right. But so much of this as well is surrounded by a framework of lawyers and law, because it's almost as though the lawyers have taken over everything, which in my view is always a bad idea. Because they'll always give you a framework and a reason for why they can do something legally.
Well, there's not. I don't get too worked up about that. If you have the rule of law, then if the law says you must do something, then you must do it. And I think one of the things about the law is it is in fact fantastically honest about the true balance of power. And what these guys have noticed is the true balance of power tells them that it's quite likely that in time, the major Western nations will be seeking some sort of accommodation with Hamas, and it might well come off the State Department's list of terrorist organizations because it suits them to do so. People don't realize just how isolated the state of Israel is going to become in the world following the events that have recently happened. And as a result, all kinds of people are going to be making accommodations with those they've previously dismissed. I would predict that, partly because of the huge damage to Israel's standing in public opinion in the United States following the events in Gaza. It also be the other way around. Israel is hideously attacked, and the behavior of Hamas, the invasion of Israel was beyond belief, disgusting and appalling. But the response to it has been so ill managed and in my view, so disastrous that I think that large numbers of people in the United States who previously would have regarded support for Israel as an unquestioned aspect of their political views are changing their minds. That means that ultimately, without the support of American public opinion, Israel is in grave danger, and that will mean, I'm afraid, hideous accommodations with terrorist organizations by countries which now are very rhetorically rude about them. But honestly, it's the old story, isn't the more that he talked of his honor, the faster we counted the spoons, the more passionate the rhetoric, the more likely it is that the person emitting it will be doing the opposite in 10 years' time.
Yeah, exactly right. Peter, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Peter Hitchens, columnist at The Mail on Sunday there, with some views on terror and freedom and lawyers as well, and of course on the economy. Let's get a voice note from Amanda.
Hi Mike, it's Amanda from Yorkshire here. I see that the Hamas PR arm is out in force today, saying that they want to have the terrorist label removed from Hamas using the ridiculous European Court of Human Rights. They say that they have a strong case. However, the fly in the ointment is October the 7th. How are they going to explain that one away? Marvellous state of affairs. Lovely show. Cheers, bye.
Thank you, Amanda. You do wonder, don't you, how these lawyers can actually go with a straight face to the Home Office and produce a petition, or effectively, which argues that, you know, they must be taken seriously as a political organisation because they won an election in 2005, probably having forced their way to do so, and they haven't had one since. But they're not actually a terrorist organisation, despite being terrorists, that they're somehow a government, which they're not. You know, they kill their own people as a result. Surely the ECHR won't recognise this, but if it does, this must be the end, mustn't it? It's 8:20.
Firstly, this has happened in 50 towns. So 5 local inquiries is going to potentially give partial answers to 5 of those towns, but what about the other 45? Secondly, local inquiries have no statutory basis, which means they can't compel witnesses and they can't compel evidence. So, of course, if you are a councillor or a council official who's been complicit in these horrible crimes and you can't be compelled to go to an inquiry, you're not going to go.
What a surprise, yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:23. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. This one from Anthony in Selby. Good morning, Mike. If that law firm are being paid by Hamas, surely they are being funded by a terrorist organisation, which is illegal. Rich says, Mike, are you serious? Even the IRA had to get pro bono for all cases. Where is the money coming from? Well, if they say they are instructed by Hamas, it seems to me that means they are getting their money from Hamas. Chris in Birmingham says, I live in Brum and my rubbish was nicked yesterday, basically collected. I wish they'd told me. I've got about 10 bags of it in the garage, and that's without the recycling bin. Not bad after 6 weeks. Yeah, well, do send us some pictures if you can, of the state of your street in Birmingham so that we can get a better handle on what exactly is going on there. Let's get a voice note from Stephen.
Morning, Mike. I think I found a solution to get rid of all this rubbish. Why don't you get all them young, fit men out at hotels that are sat around doing that and just loitering around, give them a pair of gloves and get them to clear it all up. Sure, one of them will have a driving licence. They can't all be the brain surgeons and doctors.
No, I don't think they are. But where are they going to put it, though? I mean, you have to give them a van to drive it in, presumably, and then they'll be driving around in a van, sort of jolly, with a sort of back full of rubbish. I don't know where you put it all. That's the problem. Let's talk to Jack Elson, the chief political correspondent at The Sun. This morning on page 10, Katie Lamb has written for them, Shadow Home Office Minister, who made a fantastic speech in Parliament just the other day in answer to Jess Phillips when she announced that there would be no national inquiry into the rape gangs that have so betrayed our nation. The Sun says as well that the rape betrayal is absolutely and utterly disgraceful, reprehensible, they say, and there should really be a proper instructed organised inquiry. Even Trevor Phillips, head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, once said, utterly shameful. And he's not wrong, says The Sun. Jack, a very good morning to you. Katie Lamb, I mean, what a star. I didn't know much about her until just this week, and her response to Jess Phillips was absolutely spot on, wasn't it?
It was eviscerating, and when you think about the actual lack of notice that most MPs got, 45 minutes before Parliament broke up for Easter earlier this week, Jess Phillips came out and gave this statement about the grooming gangs, and I would urge anyone to watch the full statement itself and then watch Katie Lamb's response. Shadow Home Office Minister responding on behalf of the Tories, in which she laid out in incredible detail, accusing the government of watering down their local inquiry pledge, but then going one step further and saying that anything short of a full national inquiry really is not sufficient and doesn't do justice to the scandal which thousands of people endured. Lots of the victims feel like they've never really had their day in court. Lots of the victims feel like many people have gotten away with this. And I think that the point she lays out in The Sun today is that it's all well and good saying local inquiries are the way forward, but actually many authorities, the police, town halls, councillors, were complicit in this cover-up to begin with. So how can they be trusted to hold local inquiries? Nothing short of a judge-led inquiry on a national scale will suffice.
Well, that seems to be the problem, doesn't it? And also many people have been very critical of the way Jess Phillips did it, as you say, right at the end of the parliamentary session, 40 minutes left to go. I mean, some people have even suggested to me that this whole theme park business, which we've had some fun with at the show here both today and yesterday, is all a bit of a distraction from the grooming gang, because I've seen a couple of clips from Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves yesterday announcing it, and they look sort of deliriously happy in such a way as to look disingenuous, really.
It all seems a bit rushed because it's so chaotic. I heard Home Secretary Yvette Cooper on a different radio show earlier saying that these local inquiries are actually definitely going to go ahead. Right. That's not what Jess Phillips said earlier on. She said that it will be a flexible approach so that rather than holding local inquiries, the councils could decide if they wanted to do victims panels or other sort of, a softening essentially of a full local inquiry. And so it does seem that there's a bit of confusion around this. And I think that when it comes to something like the grooming gang scandal, it's so serious. The government just need to lay out exactly what they are doing and put this to bed. Now, obviously, the Tories are making hay over this, and many people agree with them. If I was being completely fair, you would say that they did have a long time to do this when they were in government. Although, Katie Lamb was nowhere near government at the time. She'd only recently become an MP. And so I think, hats off to her for taking up this baton. But I think that now they're in opposition, they are They are pushing the government to do this. Reform also pushing the government. And I think it probably does reflect the sentiments of the public at large.
Oh, definitely, no question about it. But the other thing that I found slightly odd about Jess Phillips' statement was that she said that they'd sort of taken soundings and they'd taken feedback and they'd taken advice. And this was the advice that had led them to believe that they didn't need a national inquiry. So I don't know who they've been taking the advice from. Has that become any clearer?
Well, you presume it would be the local authorities up there. I mean, Trevor Phillips, like you said, the former head of the equalities watchdog in this country, absolutely tore strips off the government yesterday, said it was an utterly shameful decision and accused the government of essentially pandering to Muslim voters in northern towns who they are reliant upon. And obviously, many of them abandoned the party at the last election. And so that's the point he is making. Many people will agree with him on that. I think it is utterly denied by the Home Office and Labour. But this has turned into a big old row now, and I think that the government needs to pull their socks up and get on with it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is not the end of it, is it? I mean, this will come back to haunt them, I think, in the next Parliament, and perhaps even in the first session of the next Parliament, because it's a massive story that lots and lots of people want to see a proper, end to, and this is not a proper end to it.
No, and there is a danger in politics that a scandal sort of takes life and it's the talk of Westminster for a few days, and then the government says they're going to do something, and then you never hear from it again, and then it pops up a few months later. But something as serious as this, I think that it needs to stay front and centre of the government's mind. We need constant updates about what is actually going on for the victims in all of this, because I think it's them at the end of the day, isn't it, who need this.
Yeah, I think so. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Jack Olson, geopolitical correspondent at The Sun. Big piece in the paper today by Katie Lamb, a rising star, I think, in the Tory party. She's Shadow Home Office Minister right now. She formerly was an advisor in government before, but she's only a recent MP. She's an MP in Kent, of course. She says, we deserve to know the truth. What darker truth does the suffering of these girls reveal about this country, and why won't the government find out? And that is the ultimate paragraph of the piece that she's written in The Sun today. You can find it on page 10, of course. Let's get a voice note, this time from Cindy on Prince Harry.
Hi, Mike. Good morning. This is Cindy in Michigan, United States. On Prince Harry, I think he's wasting the taxpayers' money. He doesn't know the value of a pound. He is wasting money. He's not a working part of the royal family. Let's face it. And frankly, you can have him. Get him out of the United States. He's yours. He's our responsibility.
Well, as long as you agree to keep her, we'll take him back. I mean, I think that's a fair exchange, isn't it? And of course, he doesn't know anything about money. He's never had to earn money in his life. He's a spoiled, rotten little brat who thinks he could get anything he wants. Apparently, at one point yesterday in the court, when he was being forced to listen to the Home Office barrister, he threw his pen down in some kind of disgust, as sort of a temper tantrum, a bit like his dad did when he couldn't get the pen to work. Do you remember? Obviously runs in the family. These people have got no idea about the real world. Absolutely ridiculous. Mike, it's not just Birmingham, says Anna in Surrey. Try driving through Aldershot, Farnborough and Fleet. There is litter everywhere. Well, we did this, didn't we, a while back, where we got people to send in pictures of their local neighbourhoods. We're particularly interested in Birmingham right now, but if you've got pictures that you want to send us about the state of your street, the state of your town, by all means, please do it. You know the number, 0344 499 1000. Brian says, Mike, what about paying the police officers on performance? The more criminals you catch, the more money you get. Well, you see how that could go wrong, though, because it's a bit like traffic wardens, isn't it? When you get the traffic wardens who are basically on a sort of a fee per penalty charge notice they give out, they just give out loads and loads of them, many of them not even actually legally able to be given out. So the police would just be rounding people up and arresting them for all sorts of things so they could get their money up, wouldn't they? If not, having police close protection paid for by the British taxpayer keeps Meghan away from our shores, then every cloud has a silver lining, says Mark in Selby. Yeah, I see what you did there. And Nate says, got a brand new theme park coming, but how many brand new hospitals do we have coming? Well, that's also a very good point. Shall we have another look at how happy Rachel Reeves is? Because I think this is probably the clip of the day. Rachel Reeves banging on about a theme park.
Now, I know that I'm not going to make any apologies for focusing on the numbers. I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But even I will take a moment to also acknowledge that the thrill and the excitement of this theme park for all of the millions of families that will experience it is also a wonderful thing to bring to our country.
400 quid a time. There's not going to be many families from Britain going, are there? And by the way, I don't see anyone standing behind her looking thrilled. They all look absolutely bored to death. I don't think they're looking forward to it at all. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, we're going to talk to Stephen Wolfe about the new passport fees, right? Because you have to now pay more money to leave the country than you do coming into it. Because, of course, if you're coming into it from a foreign land without a passport, you've chucked it in the sea, you don't have to pay a penny. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:35. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. Long-time listener, first time sending a message. On Trump, I don't know why people can't see he's playing all these world leaders like a fiddle, and he's going to get the deal he wants for his people and country. Finally, a politician looking out for Main Street and not Wall Street. I wish we had a government with the same mentality. Here, we're more about selling islands out of guilt and Davos allegiance and losing billions doing so while our country falls apart. Protecting rape gangs, locking up Facebook Karens and banning Easter in schools while London celebrates Ramadan. The UK is shot and I'm so sad about it. Did you see two-tier Keir forget Mother's Day and other events while wishing everyone a nice Ramadan on X? What is going on in our country, Mike?
Andy, very good to talk to you, and thanks very much for being a long-time listener and a first-time voice noter. You can do the same, 0344 499 1000. Andy's right. You know, the point is that people who don't like Donald Trump don't like him because he doesn't do things the way normal people do them in politics, and that's what really sets him apart. And there might be mistakes that he makes, there might be things that he does not entirely correctly, but at the end of the day, you know, the result is that he is supported by a great deal of people, 77 million to be precise, who voted for him in the US of A. And we'll see how that all pans out. You know, the story will continue to grow over the course of the next few weeks and months. Absolutely. 0344 499 1000. Kenny from Edinburgh says, Prince Harry has not been getting treated differently, but I think that's the point. He wants to be, but I'm not a working royal and don't get round-the-clock security, but Harry isn't a working royal either, so why should he get it? He's made his bed, so he can damn well lie in it. And Alison in Richmond says, Prince Harry's security, simples, just stay away from the UK. Quite a lot of strong feeling there. Harry's more in danger from Meghan. She is scary, says Susan. Yeah, I'm sure she is. She's going to start leaning on him pretty heavily as well if he starts getting charged millions of pounds to actually pay for lawyers for the government as well as for himself. Let's talk now to Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike.
I mean, I've got to bring you some bad news this morning. It's going to cost you more to leave the country than it is to come in for free if you're an illegal migrant. Passport prices have gone up through the roof, another £6. And now for a child's passport, £61. So if you're thinking of taking the kids away for Easter or something like that, and you have to buy them a passport. I had a message from somebody who's just got a new baby, and to buy the passport for the baby, £61. I mean, it's getting ridiculous, isn't it?
It is. This is a sense of passport pilfering by the Home Office, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah.
When you look at a family of, two adults, 2 children, it's now a passport's going to be around £330.
Yeah.
And that's a huge amount of money to add on to the costs, increasing costs that we've got for holidays, VATs that are being increased for people across the country, and a burden that is not necessary if we actually reduce those people coming to this country across the Channel. I mean, I've been harking on for a while saying the cost of immigration each year is about 8 billion. The IFFO has now come in and said that they're estimating around 6.8 billion.
Wow.
So these are huge numbers being spent on Channel migrants when it could be used to reduce the cost of passports for families struggling in a recession.
Yeah, and in all of the conversations that we hear from Labour about how they're going to save a bit of money here, they're going to nick some money from welfare, they're going to try and cut back on civil service jobs, they're going to try and cut back on essential services like the police. They never say, we're going to cut back on migrants, we're going to cut back on the money we give them, we're going to cut back on the hotels we put them up in. I mean, they did say that once, and then it turned out that quite the opposite was true.
Yes, that is really the sad and surprising thing for people. We hear from the Prime Minister that he talks about stopping the gangs, and we're going to have international conferences to try and deal with this. We see and hear from the Home Office that they are going to deal with France and into new agreements, and yet all that seems to mean is passing more money, more resources over to them. But we never hear about how they're actually going to reduce the costs. And in fact, as you saw only last week, one of the big migrant cities of the UK, Glasgow, is now saying the cost of illegal migration and migration to their city is now so high that they can't afford it. They want more money from England, but it's also causing social discord. Well, we know that, and that's been happening for quite some time.
Yeah, and given that we've had 6,000 migrants come on small boats, which are now large boats, ever since the beginning of this year, the average number of migrants per small boat over the course of time has rocketed. Because we're now getting boats with sort of 60 people on them, 70 people on them. When they first started out, there was only 10 or 15, and that was a proper small boat, but they're not small boats anymore.
No, it was interesting, wasn't it, in the Prime Minister's speech that he made about the new international agreements that he wants to enter into and this international conference. For the first time, we heard a Prime Minister say these are not small boats, but rather than say that these are almost large buses coming across, he talked about how flimsy and dangerous they were.
Yeah.
Well, it's so flimsy and so dangerous, it's not stopping people coming across. All we want from the Prime Minister is to recognise that the traffic is increased and it costs us around £50,000 per individual just in their first year alone.
Yeah. It's extraordinary, isn't it? And the statistic that shocked me this morning was only 5 people have been convicted of piloting these boats across the English Channel this year, despite the fact that 6,000 people have come.
Well, I'm not surprised by that. I know it's a shocking statistic, Mike, but when they introduced this legislation, and it was the Conservatives that did so, I said that they'd find very few people that they would be able to charge because of the way that the language of the particular legislation and an offence was created. So you're not going to stop this by just saying we're going to get the person who's driving the boat, because they have to prove that first of all, and then they have to prove that they are part of a network. So it's part of policies and legislation that generally is doomed for failure because they never have any real serious deterrent in them.
And that's the thing. And we got Migrant of the Day today, a man from Greece, just to show you that we're not in any way giving fear or favour to any particular group of people from any particular country. Sally Dragodi, a cannabis dealer, who apparently successfully convinced a judge that he can't be sent back to Greece because the only reason that he actually became a drug dealer was because he ran out of money during COVID.
I mean, I'm laughable about this now because it is. You say migrant story of the day. This is ridiculous, and it's turning people against the whole system of fair asylum in this country. My favourite, Mike, I have to admit, is the one that claimed asylum from Svalbard, which is just north of Norway.
Oh yeah.
We ask ourselves, why was he leaving? And someone suggested that it's because he was frightened of the polar bears and it was just too cold.
Frightened of the polar bears. Well, this guy's going to be he's supposed to be deported to Greece, which is, you know, to all intents and purposes, a holiday destination for people in this country. Why can't he go there regardless of whether he fell on hard times and regardless of whether it's a breach of his human rights? Surely, to goodness, we're not now saying Greece is too dangerous a country to deport people to.
No, I would have thought that this is one that he could be failed on, but no doubt, as you said, he'll claim under the articles of the European Court of Human Rights that he has a right to stay here because maybe Greece is too hot for him, or perhaps that the milk that he gets here is different to that of Greece. We'll hear some sort of nasty little story like that, and it will be ridiculous.
Well, it will be, but nowhere near as ridiculous as a law firm in South London who are today announcing, or yesterday rather, announcing that they're operating on behalf of Hamas in order to get them removed from prescribed terrorist status in this country. I mean, you couldn't make it up.
No, I think this is a dangerous and a really disconcerting attempt to remove Hamas, which we know is a threat to any Jew in this country, has made a very, very clear determination they wish to wipe Israel off the map of the world, and therefore to allow them to be dedetermined, I think is the phrase that they want to use, as a terrorist organization is very deeply concerning. And I do hope that in this case, the judges look at this evidence and say, no, they have no right to be able to do this. It's in the hands of the government, and the government stays strong on this particular issue.
Yeah, I hope so. Stephen, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Prosperity, Economic Prosperity and Migration, there, keeping an eye on things as they come into this country, unabated, would you say. Let's have a quick word with Tracy, who wants to talk about the theme park. Hi, Tracy.
Hello, darling.
Good morning.
What the bloody hell do we want a theme park stuck in the middle of Bedford for? Please tell me.
I know.
What a waste of money. There's Alton Towers, there's Woburn Abbey, all around there.
Yeah, there's a centre park somewhere not far away, isn't there?
Absolutely. And people can't afford to go to them.
Yeah.
And they want to bring a Universal Studios over here and make it like America or France for people like me and any other people that can't even afford to get through the gate.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
What a waste of money. It will be derelict within a couple of years. People just ain't got that money to go to places like that. We need the money for other things. And not only that, Keir Starmer, he just sweeps things under the carpet every time. Immigration, about the rape victims, everything gets swept under the carpet because he thinks it's going to go away. And it's not going to go away. And we are losing Britain. I'm telling you that now. We are losing Britain with these immigrants coming in. And now they're saying, I heard you say this morning, that now the police want to introduce a majority of
ethnic minorities, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you tell me, immigrants that come into this country, they can false anything they want to get in our police.
Yeah.
But in the end, they'll be in our police force. I'm telling you that now.
Yeah.
It's just an absolute disgrace. I don't know. I could go on and on.
I know. Listen, I'm enjoying it. Listen, Tracy, I feel your pain. Everybody feels like you do right now in this country because we feel as though the country is being given away, sold down the river and absolutely lost to its proper history and its proper traditions. And that is the problem. And that is the tragedy. Tracy, thank you very much indeed. Kieran says this about the NHS. It's all over the place, he goes. My wife has waited for months for a telephone consultation regarding her back. She has the appointment and the doctor had to cut it short as they needed an interpreter. My wife's only been from Reading. She was born and bred in Reading. Only for them to say she's been referred to another appointment is comical. Absolutely ridiculous. And one from somebody who doesn't give a name. I love how Starmer assumes we will all go running to this theme park. What will he do or have to say if we all boycott it? Will we go to jail? No, I think not. Lewis says, I'm surprised they're not saying the new theme park will be powered by solar and wind power. Let's get another voice note from Phil.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Nottingham. Prince Harry and his quest for more security when in the UK. Now, as I can see, he only comes to the UK to go to court or for a state funeral. So, if that's the case, if he stops with the silly court cases, he won't need the security then. And at a state funeral, there are plenty of guns around. He's fine.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think he needs to stop wasting everybody's time and his own money and our money, quite frankly. The boy needs a job. That's what he needs. He's been milling around the world, having a great time. Thanks very much indeed on everybody else's coin. It's time he made some money, I think, isn't it? 8:48.
Well, the message from the White House is not mighty fine. The message from the White House is Saul Goodman.
Yeah.
So Saul Goodman.
Yeah.
Saul Good. Yeah. So look, who knows? That's all I got to say. Every time I think, oh, this is the dumbest thing ever, and you look at the stock markets, then the Republican who heads the Ways and Means Committee in Congress, which is where they do the tax, money stuff, he pointed out that small countries like Angola buy more of some of our dairy products like pork and chicken than the entire EU, which is just ridiculous.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here just before that to tell us what's going on. We've been talking about the theme park, something that still keeps you getting riled up about because, quite frankly, nobody thinks we need it. Just by way of a couple of bits of breaking news, I should have mentioned this morning and maybe given some congratulations to the King and Queen, who apparently celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary yesterday with 150 people at a romantic candlelit dinner and a secret visit to the Pope. Why not, indeed? Well done. King Charles and Queen Camilla. And also, the FTSE 100 opened up roughly 6% up earlier on today. It's still sitting up at around 5% up, which is a good recovery for the first decent day this week. Let's get a voice note from Tristan.
Universal Studios are opening up a theme park in Bedford. Fantastic. I hear they're going to be calling it the Universal Credit Theme Park because nobody will have any jobs or money to pay for tickets for the rides. Some of the rides are earmarked as Keith's Little Dipper and Rachel's rubbish haircut ride. Every day stuns me. Every day now I wake up and I'm thinking, how's he going to mess things up even further? They cancelled the rape gang inquiry yesterday. last knock-ins in Parliament, think they're going to get away with it, and lo and behold, they come up with a theme park reveal. They really do think we're idiots.
I know, absolutely shocking, isn't it? Totally and utterly ridiculous. Let's talk now to Jonathan Taylor, though, child safeguarding consultant, former detective, has worked for 15 years in child abuse investigations. We're going to talk to him about the announcement by Labour, basically, to drop the investigations and the inquiries into national problems regarding grooming gangs, rape gangs. Apparently they don't want to offend Muslim voters, and that would be probably one of the biggest betrayals of all people that has been done by one of this government since they've been in charge. Jonathan, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. We know that many of these gangs are still operational. We know that many young women are still at risk from them. Surely a national inquiry might have had an effect on those operations stopping, and actually might have had an operation on safeguarding more children.
Yeah, hugely so. So, Mike, it was part of me. I was asked yesterday, was I surprised? I suppose the answer to that was no, I wasn't, but very, very frustrated. Not only because it should be a national inquiry, the public want that. Obviously, the victims want that. But why I wasn't surprised? Well, if we go back the 30, 40 years that this has been going on, over that time, you've got all these people in public office. You've got police. You've got social workers. You've got the DOPP, CPS, all these, and MPs, local authority. You've got all these people involved, and there's no doubt about it that there's been a cover-up. There's been a cover-up for many years. I've said that. People like Maggie Oliver has worked in the area. She said that, and it's just these things. And then I watched that yesterday, the day with Jess Phillips. I actually watched her, and she just read this document. There was no feed, there's no empathy. She couldn't actually stand there and be honest. Right. It was like, this is what we're going to do. She just read it. So if somebody else written it, she did it on the paper. And then you've got these Sanandi coming in saying, well, no, we're going to do everything. No, what they should be doing is supporting the victims. Yeah. And this doesn't do it.
No, exactly right. And particularly for Jess Phillips, as a woman who sort of prides herself on, she says, protecting women and girls, spends an awful lot of time with victims of domestic violence, reads out lists of people who have been victims of domestic violence every single year in the House of Commons. And for her, this particular betrayal of young women and girls is a shocker, I think.
Well, yeah, you've got them all. I mean, Jess has said it the other. Oh, I've met with the victims, as if that we're meant to sort of go, oh, well, well done.
Yeah,
but
right.
It's not like that. What they actually want. And there was another thing that was said yesterday that she said, I think it was the harsh reality that the majority of child sexual abuse continues to be perpetrated within families. Yeah. Yes, Jess, but that's policed correctly. We've had the national inquiries when things have gone wrong with Baby P, with Victoria Cumblay. But when it comes down to these grooming gangs, I tend to think it's really wrong that we're never going to change it. But they're not grooming, they're abducting and then gang raping, basically for the rest of the life of these young girls, unless they get married or forced married. What we should be looking at is this national inquiry, because she has said a lot about wanting to support and meeting with victims. Well, actually do support. Let's go with the national inquiry. Let's actually put people in those positions where they've actually going to be under oath to say what actually happened and, more importantly, what went wrong.
Yeah, and surely she should be resigning her position rather than agreeing to go along with this, because it's not in keeping at all with what she claims that she does all the time. And Katie Lamb, who I thought was magnificent, who got up for the Tory party and gave her sort of response to this very ill thought out and very rushed piece of announcing that they did, mentioned a case in which one of the perpetrators actually married his rape victim and present at the ceremony of the marriage, and was the social worker who was supposed to be caring for the child.
Yeah, that's I've obviously heard about that. She's the girl's name, obviously not her real name, Anna, 15, and the social worker was there. You've got to think, what's going through? And what was excellent about what Katie Lamb said, she used the expression, which I think we know it, but she said racially and religiously aggravated sexual abuse of children. Yeah, you can't sum it up better than that. And the fact that you've got, because that shows what this poor girl. I mean, she'd actually been abused from a younger age than 15, and she actually then, you've also got cases whereby girls have gone in to report and they've been put back in the taxi and the driver is one of the abusers. Yeah. You've this horrendous story Mike, that you couldn't write, and that's why the support must be there. And for just to say she supports the victim, no, you don't. You're just literally covering it up again. Just you know, as somebody just said, I did hear. Well, they've now got the theme park. They're really congratulating and patting themselves on the back about. But hang on a minute. Let's get back to reality.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Jonathan, great to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Jonathan Taylor, child safeguarding consultant, former detective with 15 years in child abuse investigations. As appalled as everybody else is about this betrayal. It is a betrayal of white working class girls. Absolutely shocking. Here's another voice note from Tristan on the theme park. Oh, sorry, we've done that one. My apologies. I'll come back to that. One from Ernie. Mike, all and everybody uses the ECHR to get judgments against Britain. We never hear about our government using it. How about we challenge France and Europe in the courts for dumping their migrants on us? Well, that might be a good idea. David says, great show and support most of your ideas, but ranting about passport costs is ridiculous. A passport lasts for 10 years plus, so in life in general, it's excellent value. If people want to travel, then they can afford a passport cost. Yeah, but it's just further explanation of what the government is charging. Why are they charging more for them? What's the price of a passport got to do with people travelling? Why do you have to charge £220 for a document? You say it lasts 10 years. You're paying £22 a year for that then, if you want to get a passport in a hurry. And if you're a child, the passport only lasts for 5 years. And that's 60-odd quid. So that's more than £10 a year for a child. And if you've got more than 3 children, you're spending an awful lot of money. You know, it's just another example of this profligate government who couldn't run a party in a brewery, as we'd like to say. This is Morning Glory. Coming up, we'll be speaking to Nigel Farage in the next hour. This is Talk. We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. We're in the final hour of the show already, extraordinarily. Who knew how fast this show goes? Absolutely incredible. We're talking about theme parks, we're talking about Hamas wanting to try and get a legal definition of themselves away from being a terror group. And guess which country they choose to do that in? Yeah, of course, Britain. The land of the free, the land of the migrant, the land of the Muslim rape gangs. Brilliant, welcome. And why not? Just come in and do your worst. Let's get a voice note from James on the theme parks.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. Oh, Rachel and Kia, they're very excited, aren't they? Whee! I'm off to a theme park. Whee! Yeah, whatever. You'll be getting free tickets for it, I'm sure. And the thing is, you can be as excited as you want, but no bugger's going to be able to afford to go to the theme park because none of us have got any bloody money. Keep up the good work, Mike.
And I'm afraid that's exactly what the problem is. Nobody's going to be able to afford to do it. But the glee with which this was announced yesterday is really out of kilter with the rest of the country, some of whom are out of money already because the Rachel Reeves budget has taxed them to within an inch of their lives, oblivion for an awful lot of businesses. You know, the budgets are going down and down and down. Meanwhile, some people have taken a hit on the stock market. That's bouncing back today, thanks to Donald Trump changing his view on some of the tariffs, apart from on China. Of course, the FTSE 100 up 6 points this morning, which was now settled down to around about 5. We'll keep you updated on that. There's a story in the Telegraph. We broke it last night on Talk with Isabel Oakeshott. One of the UK's biggest police forces has temporarily blocked applications from white British candidates in an attempt to boost diversity. I mean, for heaven's sake, what is going on out there? Plus, of course, we'll be talking to you about a great many other stories as well. This is Morning Glory. Nigel Farage is here. What more could you ask? You can make a call 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Welcome to Morning Glory. Let's get another voice note on Hamas from Sean.
Hiya, Mike. Sean of Cheshire. One question. How are they going to use the European Court of Human Rights for Hamas, which is a Palestinian organisation? I think they need to go back to school, because the last time I looked at a map, Gaza and any of the other claimed Palestinian places are not in Europe. They're in the Near East. Just saying. Keep up the good work, mate. Bye.
It's quite a good point, actually, Sean, and I haven't thought of it before, but thank you very much indeed for letting us know. We'll come back to that, because Nigel Farage is here. Maybe Nigel can answer the question. Nigel, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to talk to you. I mean, only in this country would you see this sort of lawsuit surely being launched. I mean, it seems to me that this is kind of, you know, peak ridiculousness. We've now got a human rights law firm in South London representing a prescribed terrorist group trying to get their terror status lifted by going through the ECHR, which, as Sean has just pointed out, surely has no jurisdiction over Gaza.
Mike, this is all about British judges' interpretation of the ECHR, right? So the ECHR is there, and a British judge can say, well, these lovely Hamas chaps, you know, they're really being given a very rough deal. And in accordance with the principles of the ECHR, which are written into British law, we think they are a legitimate organisation. This is as much about how the judiciary lean and use ECHR rules than it is a court in Strasbourg itself.
Yeah, it is absolutely shocking. And I mean, surely to goodness, and I know this, we're in sort of Alice in Wonderland territory here, but if you've been instructed by Hamas, as these people say they have been, is that not an offence in some way?
Well, you'd have thought so, wouldn't you? But we have this bizarre situation where there are a whole series of groups that are completely outlawed by the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and countries like that are free to operate in Britain. I mean, we are so weak, so soft on Islamic extremism, it is virtually untrue. But of course, you can expect no change of that under this Labour government. After all, we saw Jess Phillips in a very cowardly way just before recess announcing that even the inquiries into the rape gangs were going to be shelved.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Trevor Phillips, the commentator, said, well, you know, the Labour government are doing this because they're playing to their Asian voters. Well, I tell you what, they weren't playing to Hindu voters. They weren't playing to Sikh voters. We know exactly what's going on here. And, of course, you know, an opinion poll this week shows that Wes Streeting would lose his seat. Jess Phillips now almost certainly would lose her seat. So you're seeing the Labour Party basically appeasing very, very extreme opinions because they're worried about where their votes will go in some of those inner city seats.
And that is the shocking thing, because surely there are some people in this country who live in Muslim communities who would condemn all of this, right? They would say, look, this is a disgusting thing that's been going on, but why don't they do it?
I don't think there are some members of our Muslim community that would condemn it. I think a very big majority would condemn it because, of course, they're very, very worried. You know, if you're a law-abiding, practicing Muslim and, you know, maybe you've qualified as a doctor and your kids are doing well at school and they're integrated in society, you know, the last thing you want are your neighbours thinking, oh, well, I wonder whether they're extremists.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is very much confined to our inner cities. It's very much confined to sort of a Kashmiri Pakistani group. That predominantly is where the problem is. And, of course, the cause of it, well, you know, I mean, I've been warning about this for over 25 years. The cause of it is unrestricted immigration on a scale that, frankly, made integration literally impossible.
Yeah.
All of these problems are direct results of government policy. And those of us that stood outside and said, you shouldn't do this, it's dangerous, were called all the names under the sun.
Exactly right. And Labour government now, of course, attempting to make out that they're going to be strong on this stuff, saying things that you would have been condemned for saying, you know, 10 or 15 years ago. But it's still not having any effect. But even Dan Hodges this morning, writing in the Daily Mail, says he thinks the grooming gangs is now actually a cover-up.
Oh, I think there's no doubt about that. There is no doubt. I mean, look, you know, I tried to push the government into having a full national inquiry. They sidetracked me by saying there'll be 5 independent ones. But here's the point. There is no... Other than some of the victims who would like to speak out, and by the way, some never want to talk about it again, some do want to speak, there is very divided opinion amongst those women. But there's no point in a national inquiry unless it has statutory powers. All right? And that's the point. Otherwise, you know, you've got to get Rotherham Council in the dock, haven't you?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. You've got to get them all in there.
Well, you've got to get Rotherham Police in the dock. Why did you not act? Etc. So it has to have statutory powers. I am told on good authority that there will be an announcement coming on Monday of a new course of action that I think will lead down the judicial review path. So something is about to happen that may be more substantial.
Well, certainly a lot of people would very much welcome that. Let's talk about the migrants just for a moment more. We do Migrant of the Day here on this show. Today's one is actually a Greek migrant who gets not to go back to Greece, not because Greece is dangerous, but because he lost money during COVID, so he decided to become a cannabis dealer. And we can't even deport people to Greece now.
No, I mean, look, the whole thing is falling to pieces. I want to make it clear we have to leave the ECHR. We have to leave it. We have to amend the Human Rights Act of 1998 and stop our left-leaning judiciary using this rule book, this code book, frankly, to twist the law in ways that many of us find unimaginable. So, yeah, keep doing your Migrant of the Day.
Yeah, we will. Well, we can't help it. You visited British Steel this week. What's going on with that? Because we're building a new theme park. Nobody knows how we're going to build it. Nobody knows who's going to build it. But Keir Starmer was very excited about it.
Yes, he is, and I'd be even more excited if tens of thousands of tons of British-made steel in Scunthorpe were used in its construction.
Yeah.
But that now looks very unlikely. We are living, Mike, through an industrial massacre. We have lost both of our aluminium smelting facilities. We've lost most of our cement making. We've lost most of our refining. Anything that needs energy, we're in big trouble with. And, of course, to produce steel, you need a lot of energy. We have the most expensive industrial energy prices in the world. And for many of these energy-intensive industries, the energy bill is bigger than the wage bill. It's the single biggest input. We are destroying British industry. We are destroying the lives of respectable working people who are proud of what they do, because we've gone down under Boris Johnson, Theresa May, and now, of course, Red Ed Miliband and this Labour government. We've become obsessed with net zero, obsessed with renewables, obsessed with not producing our own gas, which you need as backup when the wind doesn't operate. Happy to lump on to domestic users' bills, that subsidy, so the poorest, in effect, pay the most. And it's killing British industry. We are deindustrializing as a nation. Steel is not just another industry. Steel is a vital, strategic national asset. And at a time when we're talking about increasing defence expenditure, building theme parks, and at a time when the world is, I think, in a more dangerous place than it's been at any point in my lifetime, to lose this vital strategic national asset would be a disaster. So I visited British Steel, and not for the first time, but I visited British Steel earlier this week. If by Friday, the raw materials, and that's coking coal, which, by the way, we import rather than produce ourselves, crazy. If we haven't got that, and if we haven't got the iron that we need, then those blast furnaces will close by the second week of May, and we will become the only member of the G20 leading nations in the world that is not a primary steel producer. And 3,000 families in Scunthorpe will lose their jobs, and the town will become a disaster zone. And that's why I've said we should never have sold this to the Chinese in the first place. Richard Tice and I were vociferous about that back in 2019. I genuinely believe the Chinese bought it to close it down.
If it suits their purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got this pathetic effort by the government this morning saying, oh, well, we'll buy some coal for you. The Chinese are not interested. They want to close that down. This needs to be nationalised immediately, whilst we find a private consortium that can take it over, and we have to find an end to subsidising renewable energy and artificially inflating the prices. Honestly, the lack of national debate on this has been stunning, that's because the Tories and Labour have all agreed that somehow we on our own are going to save the planet. It's absolute load of old baloney.
It is mad, isn't it? But, I mean, you and I are old enough to remember when nationalisation was a thing, and it wasn't very good. I mean, what could be better now? How can we do it better?
Well, the point is, if we don't nationalise it, it will close. So we nationalise it now. We find a way of giving British Steel energy at a competitive price, and we then look and we then bring in some steel executives from other parts of the world where they've managed to turn around difficult situations. We have to be a steelmaker.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. Nigel, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Nigel Farage MP, leader of Reform, of course. He's been to British Steel, wants to nationalise it. Surely we have to be able to produce our own steel. As he said, you don't want to be out of that group of G20 countries that produces steel on their own, do you? 0344 499 1000. Just before we talk to Lord Robert Hayward, a Tory peer and pollster, shall we have another look and remind ourselves of how excitable Keir Starmer is about this theme park opening up?
As you can imagine, when I took over as Prime Minister, people warn you that there are tough days that you're going to face. Responsibility for the armed forces, for fixing the NHS, sorting out the economy. So you can imagine that when someone comes and says, would you like to launch and open a theme park? That's a completely different day. And that's why I was so delighted when Mike came to Downing Street yesterday. And we were able to shake hands on this deal, this new Universal UK resort and theme park. What a momentous day. What such an important day.
Such an important day, according to Keir Starmer. Let's talk to Lord Robert Hayward. Lord Robert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm sorry to say this, but his enthusiasm seems to be over and above all sorts of expectations for such a project, it seems to be, which is going to be run by a private American company, making profits for a private American company, who at the moment seem to be charging somewhere between 350 and 400 quid a ticket for their Universal Studios place in America.
Yes. It is good news that we have theme parks, that we can attract investment from around the world. There's no question about that. And I say that with relatives who live literally across the road from the site where that theme park's due to be built. They've not been ringing me up with vast enthusiasm. But having said that, investment is good. We shouldn't deride it, whatever it may happen to be. As you say, it may well be very costly. but it's better here than it would be if it was in France or Germany and people from Britain went to it in another country.
Yes, I guess that's true, as long as the investment and the money, if you like, is not coming from taxpayers who are getting sorely fed up of having all their tax money being used to attract people into the country who could make money from us.
Oh, absolutely. And as far as I'm concerned, you have to ask the question, well, if you can find ways of doing this investment at Bedford, why couldn't you find the money for an AstraZeneca factory in the northwest?
Right.
Which has now gone off and invested elsewhere in the world. So it is right that government provides some money, but you have to make a judgment on the circumstances.
Yes.
And I'm confused about the decisions on one side and not the other.
Yes, I agree with that. Their net zero position seems to be a little bit contradictory at the moment, the government, because on the one hand, they're still talking about having net zero targets, albeit that they're making them sort of maybe slightly further away, 2035 instead of 2030 for cars, you know. But they're still talking about expanding Heathrow Airport, expanding Gatwick, expanding Luton. You know, it seems to me that they're not even sure themselves. And with the British Steel situation, we were just talking there to Nigel Farage, you know, they don't seem to want to save that either.
No, and I think this is the real problem, is that nobody actually really understands what the term net zero is. If you put each of the cabinet ministers in a different room and said define net zero, you would get as many different answers as there are cabinet ministers.
Yeah. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because they can't agree on anything. I mean, Ed Miliband basically wants us to hit net zero tomorrow and would like to stop everybody from flying anywhere at all, unless it's to a climate conference in Brazil, in which case you're fine. But, you know, they do seem very mixed up about their economic policy.
I'm afraid they are. On the question of the cost of electricity, which Nigel Farage referred to, this has been a problem for decades, and unfortunately it's under all governments, and we have failed to address the issue of why we are scaring off all sorts of industries, not just steel, as Nigel Farage was referring to, but other energy-intensive industries. And we have to find a solution to that issue. Nigel made reference to the problem, but he didn't provide a solution. I don't know what the answer is. I do not know why it's cheaper to produce electricity in France than it is in Britain. But some government or another of some persuasion has to solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, my understanding, without wishing to pretend to be an expert in these matters, is that the French get a great big dividend from producing so much fuel by nuclear power stations, which we could have been doing if we'd built any, and which we sometimes say we're going to build, and then sometimes we say we're not going to build them. And it seems to me that we are also suffering at the altar of net zero for a lot of the renewables and the subsidies that we have to pay renewable companies. And again, more people getting rich on the taxpayer's dollar.
Well, there's also another solution, and I agree with you in relation to nuclear, because you can actually have small Magnox reactors, which Rolls-Royce have developed very successfully and are working on in other parts of the world, as well as the possibility in this country. But I was an MP for Bristol, sorry. And in relation to the estuary there, there's a thing called wave power, and tidal energy are available. We are an island.
Yeah.
And I'd like a few of the civil servants in the Department of Energy to go and stand on a seashore and recognise wind stops now and again, as you indicated. Tides don't.
Yeah.
And we could have invested in tidal energy 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right. I seem to remember they tried to do that in Cardiff, didn't they? Or somewhere in Wales. Swansea. And it didn't work out terribly well. They ended up doing away with it. I don't know if that was just the way they designed it or it wasn't quite as good as it ought to have been.
There were all sorts of internal problems. I took a limited interest in that subject.
Yeah.
But I first I worked for GEC before I went into the House of Commons.
Yeah.
And I met a minister, and we're talking in the late 70s, early 80s. I met a minister with people from GEC talking about the possibility of having a tidal barrage on the Severn estuary. Now, the opportunity's been there for decades, but for some reason or another, we just seem unwilling to look at that as an option. But Swansea, there were particular problems with, but there are other places in Britain where you could have had this for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Lord Robert Hayward, Tory peer and pollster, former GEC man, former MP, of course, as well. It's coming up to 9:22. Morning, Mike, says John from Northampton. I usually agree with Peter Hitchens. However, this morning I think he has Donald Trump wrong. First-time texter, I listen every day. Keep up the great work. Yeah, absolutely. I think you don't always have to agree with Peter Hitchens. You don't always have to agree with me. You just have to listen to the home of common sense. Morning, Mike. Thinking about the case of the girl Anna marrying her abuser with the social worker as a guest at the ceremony. Surely that is illegal. In this country, the minimum age you can marry, according to British law, is 18. So an illegal marriage and consequent statutory rape, all witnessed and condoned by social services, absolutely sickening, says Susan in Worthing. I think so. And Martin says, good morning, Mike. Somebody in Hull has fitted some headgear to my sticker. I do hope you approve. If not, I remove the headgear forthwith. Personally, I think it suits you. I can't quite make out what it is, but it looks like somebody's painted something on there. It's a headband. Oh, very good. The home of common sense. Well, listen, somebody else has made up some action figures as well, which don't look anything like me. They've done one of Kevin O'Sullivan and one of Jeremy Kyle, and they look ridiculous. But that's another story. It's 23 minutes past 9. Let's get a voice note from Claire.
Hi Mike, Claire here from Worcestershire. I'm listening to your show this morning, great show as always. I really think the government are completely neglectful in what has happened. It's still happening and our children are not safe. Our communities are not safe. And then they give more headline and more time and more news to a theme park. They are the biggest theme park because they are an absolute joke. They are riding the entire country into the ground. I can't get over Jess. I really cannot get over her. Her entire life work now is meaningless. She has no courage of her own conviction. She absolutely needs to resign.
I think you would have much agreement on that one, Claire. A lot of people saying, what a hypocrite. You know, it would be one thing if she'd always been the way that she was on the other day in Parliament, where she wasn't that interested in young women and girls, but to pretend that that's your main focus in life, to protect young women and girls, and to then deny those same young women and girls justice. Doesn't seem right to me. 24 minutes past 9. Coming up, Al Carnes is here, Labour MP for Birmingham Selly, also Minister for Veterans and People in the Ministry of Defence.
And Meghan basically felt that they were singled out for inferior treatment and they had to step back as working royals.
Well, I think what his barrister has said is complete and utter poppycock, to be perfectly honest. Look, Harry was the one who made the decision that he wanted to go and live in America and make his own money. Absolutely fine. No problems whatsoever. whatever's happened under the bridge and everything else, whatever. He cannot expect to have a gun bodyguard on standby just in case he decides to turn up here again.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:28. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Grew will be here then. We've got loads and loads of messages coming through. Thank you for sending them in. One of the big stories this week, of course, and last week, has been the mess in Birmingham, particularly in Selly Oak. We saw it last week when we had a reporter walking around the streets of Selly Oak, and particularly bad rubbish piles up in that part of the world. Partly, I'm told, because there's a lot of multiple occupancy housing, and so therefore quite a lot of students, quite a lot of people who don't have cars, they can't get rid of the rubbish. There's rats all over the place. There's now a rat tax. Birmingham councillors are resigning. Labour MP for Birmingham Selly Oak and Minister for Veterans and People in the Ministry of Defence, Al Carnes. Welcome to Morning Glory, Al.
Morning, Mike. Thanks for having us on the show.
Good to talk to you. How bad are things in Birmingham? We hear from some people that parts of Birmingham are less bad than others, but it does seem to be. We had a lorry driver this morning ring in to say he was just driving down by the M42, and he said you can smell it. It smells like a sort of a big garbage tip from somewhere in the Philippines.
Yeah, so I was walking around Selly Oak just the other day, and indeed yesterday. I went to meet some students as well to talk about the issues. And we've had a real issue with the bins, as you've seen on sort of national media. And I would just implore both the council and those on strike and the unions to come together to get a solution to make sure that the constituents and the people of Birmingham can get their rubbish collected. It is getting better. The council has declared a major incident. The picket lines have moved back, and we have got trucks moving now. We've got one rubbish collection a day, but it's nowhere near the service required for such a major city in the UK.
Right. I mean, this dispute's been going on since about the beginning of the new year, it seems to me. And I'm told it's only about a relatively small number of actual bin men.
It is. It's to do with a small number. It's to do with the grades of people in the trucks themselves. I don't necessarily want to get into detail of the negotiation. What I would say is the services before the strike weren't necessarily the best. And we want a much better service post the strike. So I just implore the parties involved to get together. We've worked with the police to pull the picket lines back to get those trucks moving. That major incident being declared was absolutely required. It was supported obviously by government. The Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Local Governments has stepped in as well. It's a real issue. You can see some of the shots on your screen there. It is getting better, but it's nowhere near what is required for the constituency either in Selly Oak or for broader Birmingham.
I mean, some people said to me that the government and ministers from the government, I don't mean you in particular, but should be doing more. Angela Rayner, Minister for Levelling Up and all of that, whatever it's now called. Should there not be more intervention rather than just imploring them? Can you not make them do a deal?
Well, the Deputy PM did step in. The whole government stepped in, and that's why we saw the major incident declared. That's how we saw the police now getting involved and pushing those picket lines back. So there's been a lot of active work, but not just the day-to-day news in Parliament, but actually behind the scenes. And the negotiators are working really hard to come to a solution. But what I would say is we want a really good service post, this strike, and that service must be representative of the second biggest city in the UK, which is obviously Birmingham.
It says here in The Sun that you are Britain's toughest MP, and apparently you're going to climb Everest. Is this right? And you're going to use some kind of controversial gas to do it?
Yeah, so we're going up in 7 days. Couldn't take time off work for any longer than that, so we're doing it for veterans charities, a great cause. So if anyone's interested in supporting us, that would be super. We're trying to break the record. It was 21 days to get to the top and back. We're trying to do it in 7 days, myself and 3 other veterans.
Yeah.
which is a great little challenge. And lots of volunteers out there hold up the council. They hold up lots of different parts of society. So why me as the minister? Why can I not do something above and beyond my job?
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll watch that with some interest. I mean, they have a problem with rubbish on Mount Everest as well. So I hope you're not going to take any there and leave it behind.
Well, that's a really good point. It's one of the reasons why we're doing it quick. No trace, no waste. So it's going to be nice and fast.
I just want to ask you one more final question. We had Luke Pollard on, one of your other ministers, a couple of weeks ago, and he was hoping to pass on to you a letter that we'd received from the father of one of the young men who was a Red Cap back in Iraq in 2003, who lost his life. This is John Miller, who's also got another son already in the armed forces as well, and he's looking and has been looking for a long time for some kind of justice for his son. And I know it's a very long time ago, and he's tried it through various different ministers and various different Secretary of State for Defence, and I promised him that I would put this to you. Were you able to get that letter from Luke Pollard? Do you know if it was passed to you? If so, have you got any update for us?
So I will go and make sure that letter gets to me and I look into it. But the reality is there's been a lot of turmoil in Iraq between the incident and now. And what we're trying to do is really work with the Iraqi government to hold people to account for the loss of his son. So we are working on it, and so are the FCDO. But I'll absolutely get on that letter and make sure that we follow up with it.
Appreciate that. So can we give him some hope that at least the circumstances of the death will be investigated properly?
Why don't we do one better, and I'll invite him into the office and we can sit down and have a chat face to face.
That would be brilliant. That would be really good. I'm sure he'll be very pleased. Al, thank you very much indeed. Al Carnes, Labour MP for Birmingham, Selly Oak, and John Miller, if you're listening, hopefully you heard that, and we'll make sure that you guys get put into touch. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have a word now with Ed Lennox, Director of Operations for Clean Up Britain, because I'm sure he is as aware of what's going on in Birmingham as anyone. Ed, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, we've seen all of the footage, we've seen the letters that have been written, we've seen the various sides of the dispute arguing with each other. But, I mean, we just heard from Al Carnes there, the MP for Selly Oak, saying things are on the improvement, things are improving. But are they really?
Well, I think that, we all want to be as optimistic as possible, but it's clearly demonstrative of a wider problem in the UK. I don't want to get too deep into how complicated this is to sort out, but if you want an object lesson in how not to organise a council and how not to organise refuse collection, you could do a case study on Birmingham, and the people of Birmingham deserve much, much better. And what's really alarming, and this is replicated everywhere in the country, is as soon as you get a small accumulation of rubbish, you get a massive accumulation of fly tipping on top of it.
Yeah.
And so we in the UK have got to really, really have a long, hard think about how we treat the disposal of the waste generated by a consumer society.
Yeah.
But I think wider than that, we need to really look at how local authorities and refuse collection more generally is structured, because what's going on in Birmingham is ridiculous. It's a small number of people holding the whole population to ransom, and we should not allow that situation to develop.
Yeah.
And the reasons for that are many and wide-ranging.
Yeah, I'm told it's something like 17 individual bin men, effectively, that have caused all of this.
Well, I had a bit of a read about it last night, and I tried to do as much research as I could so that I had some idea of the quantum of the problem. But it seems to be somewhere between sort of 20 or 30 and 70 people who I believe have the role of waste recycling and collection officers, which the Unite Union seem to be suggesting is a safety issue. Well, by the wildest stretch of the imagination, you don't need 70 or 80 waste recycling and collection managers in a city the size of Birmingham.
Yeah.
Where I gather the pay differential is about £8,000 a year.
Right.
So I think structurally there's a problem there potentially. But I'm not, I'm not in the room. But these people should not be allowed to hold the whole city to ransom. It's disgusting.
It really is. And I mean, in terms of just how much it will take to clean this up, I don't mean money, I just mean sort of effort. Some people say that parts of Birmingham are a little better than others because people can take the rubbish to the dump. In many of the areas where it's bad, like Selly Oak, there's a lot of multiple occupancy houses, and a lot of students, people without any ability to drive anywhere, no cars, and there's rats everywhere. I mean, how long before you can get rid of all of that?
Oh, God. Well, again, I'm not an expert in refuse collection, but it's going to take a long time to clear it up, and then it's going to take a long time to get rid of all the rats.
Yeah.
But more than that, the legacy it leaves is that it shows Birmingham, our second city, to be a disgraceful dump.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's horrible, isn't it?
Well, really what you should do, local authorities should not be allowed to have a single refuse collection contract where there's no backup plan. I mean, in the private sector, you'd be forced to have a plan B. And, much though the Unite Union would hate to hear this, there should be competitive pressure exerted on them. I can't speak too closely, but it seems to me that Unite are just being bloody minded. And, certainly you're not going to have any private businesses rushing to Birmingham to ask them how to run any organisation because they've shown themselves to be hopeless.
No. And, of course, one of the problems with the council itself is that it's basically bankrupt. It hasn't really got any money either.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's bankrupt because they're useless, but that calls into question the whole structure of local government. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't select the businesses I trade with based on whether they're run by Conservatives, Liberals, Labour Party activists. And I don't really see why we've got this obsession with voting in people who probably wouldn't get a job in the private sector to help run our local authorities and choose the people to run them on vast salaries. They seem to be woefully useless at it. Yeah. And I'm using this as an example, I'm citing the examples that we have in Clean Up Britain dealing with local authorities. They're just normally very, very, very inefficient people running organisations inefficiently, appointing contracts that they don't really understand. And I think that there is a wider problem. I don't see why we need a political representation per se at the council level. We've got a local MP, and we should appoint commercial contractors who, if they don't do a good job, can be got rid of. Yeah. Because then you just cannot have a situation where 70 or 80 people are holding the whole of the city of Birmingham to ransom. It's not acceptable, and it's a health hazard. And we need to learn from this and make sure it can't happen again. Yeah, very sensible idea. Ed, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Common sense there from Ed Lennox, Director of Operations at Clean Up Britain. Yeah, why do you need politicians at a local level? Just get rid of them all and just have people that actually can run the thing properly. And if they can't do it, get rid of them until you find some people who can actually operate a business based on common sense. They've got loads of money coming in. Why can't they make it work? Let's get a voice note from Craig on theme parks.
Good morning, Mike. Craig from South Wales. There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I'll do, mate, I'll shove a $5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots. Do us a favour. Ask Nigel Farage when he gets in power, please, please, please take Peter Blexley and put him in charge of the police force and put some good old-fashioned bobbies on the beat. Excellent show, Mike. Have a great day. Well done, Craig. Thank you very much indeed. And very generous of you. And I've got this from Els Bells in Shropshire. I just took delivery from our Royal Mail, and I've got to say how totally disgusted and embarrassed I am of the attire deemed acceptable. The postwoman wearing shorts that was only suitable for the beach. They were that far up her backside. Tattoos, that I have no issue with, on show from her thighs to her ankle. Bright fashion trainers and a red Royal Mail issue shirt. Call me old-fashioned, but where is the standards? Are Royal Mail happy for their staff to represent them in this way? I'm fuming. This is exactly an example of the standards and respect that are lacking in this country. Yeah, well, that's before you even start talking about the delivery system, for heaven's sake. I've got a bit of an issue with that myself at the moment, which I may explain to you later on in the week, or possibly tomorrow. This is, of course, the one place to get common sense. And coming up, Paul Scully, former Post Office Minister, funnily enough, he can talk to us about the Royal Mail uniforms, perhaps. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:42. I'm Mike Grove with you all the way through, of course, until 10, which is not very far away. It's less than 20 minutes to go. If there was a bin strike in my town, says Steve, I guarantee I could mark on a map the areas that would soon look like parts of Birmingham, fly-tip dumps and those parts of town where people would have more respect for their neighbourhood and try to keep things tidier. It's a huge cultural issue, not just a result of the disputes. Well, that may well be the case. We don't know for sure, but certainly there are some parts of Birmingham better looked after than others, and there's no doubt about that. Paul Scully's here, former Post Office Minister. We need to talk about all sorts of things because first-class post in 3 days is too expensive. Delivering it is apparently not working out quite so well. Postal Service is saying stamp prices are getting really, really high and very few people, if any, are now using the Postal Service. Paul, very good morning to you.
Morning to you, Mike.
Good to see you. Yeah, thanks very much indeed. The price of a first-class stamp is now £1.70, which will come as a bit of a shock to people. I mean, I don't tend to use the post that much. I mean, obviously, you know, businesses still use it quite a bit. But there's an awful lot of pressure, isn't there, at the top end of Royal Mail delivery, not just on letters, but also on packages as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the profit is in parcels and packages. That's what people want to deliver as well from online shopping and the like. So, like you, many people just don't use stamps for letters anymore.
Yeah.
This idea of having the NHS, the new NHS barcode, is sensible move, I think, but to cover up the shortfalls, one in the delivery failures by the Royal Mail, but also the fact that actually the NHS is still using post and are still reliant on the post for getting some really urgent critical appointments to people.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we just had a note apropos of nothing really, and it's not particularly relevant to you being on, but a note from somebody who's saying that, you know, the postal delivery person who turned up at her door was sort of dressed in what she called very inappropriate outfits. I mean, is that a thing? I don't see the postman that often, but I haven't seen anyone with short shorts on or anything.
I was going to say, they're always in shorts, no matter what the weather. A postman and the post people are always in shorts, whether male, female, young, old, or whatever.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it is a problem, though. I mean, how much has the post office changed over time? Because, you know, when you were former post office minister, you know, there was a lot less, I suppose, fragmentation of the business, you know, whereas nowadays you see, if you walk down any street in Britain, there's about 5 different delivery lorries from 5 different, you know, courier companies, some of which are better than others, all of which are competing with Royal Mail, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's only 5 years ago that I was Post Office Minister. That fragmentation had started, but clearly it's only going in one direction as more and more people are reliant for the various services like, you know, Every and Amazon vans and these kind of things, DHL and the like, for their online shopping parcels. And that's where, as I say, the profit is going. And so most postal services that focus on parcels are profitable. It's the one that have the Royal Mail has that universal service obligation to get those letters to us, no matter where we are in the country.
But what they're now saying is they can't guarantee within any sort of reasonable amount of money that they can do a first-class stamp deliverable within 3 days. I mean, it used to be 1 day. When did it suddenly become 3 days? They're now saying a second-class stamp will only get your letter to somebody within 5 days.
Yeah, and I think there's
mad.
It's a combination of things. It's all that kind of stuff. In terms of, as I say, pressure on postal services with fewer people using it, but it's a lack of investment as well, I think, in the years gone by.
Yeah.
So hopefully with the takeover by Daniel Kretinsky, the Czech Sphinx as he's known as, hopefully that we can get some more investment in and that can change the game a little bit.
Is that going to get better? I mean, is that going to, you know, it's effectively privatised, isn't it now?
Yeah, I mean, he owned a good chunk of the shares. I mean, Royal Mail was sold off by Vince Cable when he was, remember him? When he was
I remember him, yeah.
coalition government. So it's been private for a while. It's now taken under private ownership rather than being traded publicly.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's see. I mean, I met Daniel Kretinsky a few years back. He seems like a sensible head. He's turned around postal services elsewhere in Europe. Let's see.
Now, I know that's a very different business, but we've been talking about British Steel today as well, because Nigel Farage is talking about the need for it to be nationalised. Nationalisation used to be a dirty word in right-wing politics, but seemingly that's changed now. What do you think's changed that, and do you think it's a good idea?
No, I don't think it's a good idea, to be honest. I mean, look, I agree with you that nationalisation still is very much a last resort, because what steel needs, it's steel in this country. We're trying to move towards, sustainability, net zero, all that kind of things, which needs electric arc furnaces, which can only do certain types of steel. And if no one's buying that kind of steel, then we're not competitive.
Right.
We do need to look at...
But isn't then the problem that you're creating a business failure model then? Because by putting in the electric arc model, you don't have a business anymore.
Yeah, effectively, and this is part of the problem. I think British Steel has not been able to move as quickly as other countries, and clearly that's also because of China dumping steel on markets and those kind of things, which is why lots of I know tariffs is a big controversial word at the moment, but the tariffs have been sensibly put on China steel at the moment because that's distorted the market, including the UK market.
Yeah, right. But I mean, the other problem, of course, is that if you've got all of this net zero business driving industry, heavy industry, and driving it out of business, then surely at some point somebody goes, well, maybe we shouldn't be driving business out of business and try and keep what we've got.
Totally. I mean, the thing with net zero, some bits of net zero are fine if you're actually looking at using technology and things like that to drive those changes to have a more sustainable business, reduce water usage, you reduce energy costs, etc. But that's over a period of time. If you're just penalising businesses, penalising customers, then clearly that just makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to talk to you. Paul Scully, thanks very much indeed. Former Post Office Minister, of course, and Tory MP as well, and Mayor candidate for London. Bigsy in Bristol makes a good point. Why is Universal building a theme park in a country where it will be shut for 5 months between November and April? Then we have rain throughout the rest of the year and extreme winds in October. Seems to me the public is paying for this so-called privilege. Oh, and apparently climate change doesn't matter for theme parks. Well, wait until you see how excited Rachel Reeves is by the idea. Let's have a look.
Now, I know that I'm not going to make any apologies for focusing on the numbers. I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But even I will take a moment to also acknowledge that the thrill and the excitement of this theme park for all of the millions of families that will experience it is also a wonderful thing to bring to our country.
Oh dear, it makes you want to weep, doesn't it? That's Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, right? While sort of governing the country into practically a recession. She's very excited about something that won't happen for years and years and years. Tim in Southampton says, morning Mike, the Birmingham waste dispute involves a maximum of 70 people with a pay differential of £8,000, and this whole dispute revolves around a cost of £500,000, while the cost of cleaning up the waste and the rats will run into millions. Absolute madness. Of course it is. Absolutely right. We've got more coming up after this.
I've consistently called since being elected the Member of Parliament here back in 2019 for a inquiry across the Bradford district. Why? Because I fear that the scale of the issue of gang rape, child sexual exploitation will far dwarf that in the scale of Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, and where else we've had. And therefore been campaigning on this, but we have not had any reassurance at all from the government.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:53, welcome back to A Morning Glory, the home of common sense. Ingeborg says, morning Mike, how come in consumer societies like South Korea and especially Seoul there are no bins? People take their rubbish home, waste from restaurants, hotels, cafes, etc. is collected daily. Perhaps our bin managers are a bit too well paid and ignore what our society needs and are not their personal greed. Just a thought. Have a great day. And one from Hayley says, first time messaging, we have a migrant of the day on our local Facebook groups in Doncaster. Every village has a migrant of the day. What will our kids' lives look like in 5 years? I have no idea. Just so sad what this government is allowing to happen to this country. Yeah, thanks for that. Lee's in Norfolk wants to talk about the bin strikes. Hi, Lee.
Morning, Mike.
Morning, sir. What can I do for you?
Well, the United Union own, or as far as I know, they still own the hotel in Eastbourne.
Oh, yeah.
The Eastbourne Centre, which is like a conference centre, and they have been trying to offload it for quite a long time.
Right.
Because they've built a new one in Birmingham.
Yeah, they built a new one in Birmingham, which was embroiled in some kind of scandal, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, because apparently it went way over.
Yeah, there was a lot more money swilling through it than there was meant to be.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the Eastbourne one, because they couldn't sell it, they offloaded it to a management company.
Right.
So it was still effectively owned by Unite.
Right.
But it was then run by, I think, part of the Hilton Group or something took over.
It's probably full of migrants anyway, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't
More
know
than likely.
Yeah, we used to go there, do a lot of courses.
Right.
And all the staff were previously employed by Unite. Were then 2P'd over to this new company.
Yeah.
We went on a course just after it was taken over.
Right.
We spoke to the guys who we'd known we'd been going there for 4 or 5 years, and said, what's it like working for this lot? And he said, oh, it's a lot better because at least we're not on 0 hours contracts.
Oh, what? Because that was what Unite were on?
Apparently, yeah. Two of the guys we spoke to, who we'd known,
yeah,
who'd been there all the time we'd been going there,
right,
actually said we're now on permanent contracts, not on 0 hours contracts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've known, I mean, for years, Labour have been terrible at employing people. I mean, up until relatively recently, they used to pay people sort of minimum wage if you worked for the Labour Party. I mean, they were full of the joys of spring about getting other people to pay more money to their employees, but they didn't do it themselves.
So it just shows you the hypocrisy.
Total hypocrisy. Lee, thanks very much indeed for that. Tom's in Milton Keynes, wants to talk about theme parks. Tom.
Good morning.
Morning. You're not going to be too far away from this place, are you, in Luton?
Not in Milton Keynes, no. I'm in sunny Blackpool at the moment on a camping holiday. But there we go.
How are the theme parks up there?
Oh, fantastic. The one in Bedford has been on the cards for years, many years.
Right.
It was about 5 years ago I moved in. I'm sure it was talked about then. So
it was,
nothing at all to do.
I mean, they actually announced the site, I think, in 2023 under the Tories, so everybody knew it was coming, but they've just made out that it's their baby, and they've suddenly managed to sort of make it happen. Well, first of all, they haven't made it happen, and second of all, nobody knows when it's going to actually exist.
The other thing I thought was quite funny from a business point of view, from the way they're putting it, you think as a major international business, they were trying to decide whether to go or not.
Right.
And then Rachel Reeves gave her budget and says, we're going to increase your national wage, we're going to increase the minimum wage, Miliband's going to guarantee you extra cost for your energy. Well, yeah, that's definitely the place we want to go and do business, isn't it?
I know. I mean, well, this is the thing. I mean, it may well become the next 2 or 3 years that the economy in this country is so awful and the cost of everything is so expensive, especially electricity, that they'll just decide not to do it.
Sorry, Donald will maybe come across here when he's finished in America and sort us out.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Enjoy Blackpool, Tom. Have a good time. A great place to go on holidays, Blackpool. Maybe the only place you can afford to go by the time this lot finished with you. One from this person says, Rachel from accounts has got an awful lot in common with Universal theme parks. I've been to their parks in Hollywood and in Orlando, and what they have in common with the Chancellor is a brilliant ability to separate you from your money. It will be just another American version of Alton Towers. Parking and food costs will be extortionate by themselves. I think I'll give it a swerve. Absolutely. And Stuart says President Trump is a patriot. Starmer is not a patriot. America's the biggest, richest economy in the world, and 36 trillion in debt and going up billions every day. So only a complete turnaround of the tariffs will work, and President Trump knows exactly what he is doing. This one from Karen in Taunton. Mike, on this new LIBOR theme park, do you remember National Lampoon when they went to Wally World? Yes, I do remember that. That's very much what it could be like, I think. It'll be a sort of cut-rate theme park, I think. Great show as usual. Is there any chance anyone from West Yorkshire Police could come on and explain their blatant racism to the people, says Dean in Dagenham. Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? But I suspect they probably will prefer to issue a nice little statement for us all, which we can read out without actually having to put anybody through the ringer, because they don't like that very much. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, I mean, neither you nor I could apply to be a police officer.
Oh, I don't think you're plugged in, sorry.
Oh, I'm not plugged in.
Don't worry, I'll give you time to do that. You know, it's not easy, this business. We do it every day, but sometimes we forget.
It's all very technical, isn't it?
I sometimes sit here at the start of the show and go, oh, I haven't got my inputs
Are they waving madly at you in the control room?
I know. Anyway, sorry.
I don't know, we might put figures up if they can't hear us.
Yeah, it's possible. Just watch and